Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 12th, 2024 Victor Planning Board meeting. I'd like to start with a pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all. I'd like to start with some announcements, please. The emergency exits, please note they're on the left and the right from your space. There are restrooms just outside the door and on the left. Please be sure to sign the attendance sheet at the back of the meeting room, even if you are a developer and are presenting the application. There are business cards on the back table as well, next to the sign-in sheet, if you need some contact information, emails and phone numbers for the planning department, should you have any questions after the meeting. Also on the back table are copies of resolutions that will be read tonight, along with the agenda. Please, for the sake of everyone else, silence your cell phones. You can turn them off or just put them on silent or airplane mode. And also, please take all conversations out in the hallway if you choose to have any amongst yourselves. That way you won't be disturbing those presenting before the board. Thank you. Meeting minutes. No meeting minutes for approval this evening. Correspondence received. Anything we've gotten for tonight's meeting to date was in your packet. Board and committee updates. Is Drew here from the town board? I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Well, then Keith Maynard, planning board update, and something from Drew from the town board.
Good evening, Keith Maynard, project manager for the town of Victor. First, Councilman Cusumano could not make it tonight. Some child care concerns. So he had two things he wanted me to tell you about. They passed at the bill pay meeting today for the town board. They passed a resolution to schedule a public hearing for the new solar law at their December 16th town board meeting, and then, which is 7 o'clock in this room. And then they scheduled a public hearing for the proposed PDD for Victor Heights Parkway, which you'll be talking about later this evening, for their first meeting in January, which I don't have that date, but it's the first town board meeting in January. I want to say it's 6th or the 8th. It'll be on the website.
It's probably the 8th-ish.
January 14th.
Yeah, if you have it.
January 6th.
6th, okay. So 7 o'clock again in this room. And then for me, for the planning board, your next meeting is Tuesday, December 10th at 7 p.m. There's a sketch plan application for Aldridge Road and County Road 9, owners DeHollander Design. Applicant is requesting acknowledgement of a complete application to develop a 5-lot duplex subdivision on 10.29 acre parcel. This is the first step of a major subdivision. Only acknowledgement of a complete application will be considered at this meeting. The second one is a preliminary application for Nikoloff subdivision, Blasey Road, owners Keith Nikoloff. Applicant is requesting approval to develop 42.4 acres into 8 lots with driveways coming off of Blasey Road. And then the last one is a preliminary final application for 115-117 Victor Heights Parkway. Owners Victor Heights Campus LLC. Applicant is requesting approval to subdivide a 3.7 acre parcel into 2 separate parcels. There are currently 2 existing 16,000 square foot buildings on the parcel, and this is the second step in a major subdivision. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Keith.
Okay, thank you.
Just to note that there are only one meeting each in November and December for the planning board, and we'll start back up in January with 2 meetings per month. So, all right, there are 8 items on the agenda this evening. The first several items are public hearings. The public will get an opportunity to speak, ask questions of the developer and or the board, or make comments. Please limit your time to 3 minutes if you do, and we will have to cut off at 5 minutes unless there's a reasonable amount of time available. So with that, the first item is Postler and Jekyll expansion, 31 Victor Heights Parkway. Applicants requesting approval to construct a 20,200 square foot addition to the western side of the building.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Matt Tomlinson with Marathon Engineering.
joined by members of the developer or purchaser of the property, as well as the architecture team tonight, to answer any questions that the board may have. As mentioned, we're located at 51 Victor Heights Parkway. There's an existing building present on the site. And interestingly, as part of the due diligence period on the property for the prospective purchaser, which is Posler and Jekyll, for relocating some of their sheet metal and shops that are in multiple locations to this location to get it all under one roof, there was an understanding from the current owner that there was previous approvals in place for this expansion, but in research with the town, both for variances and site plan approvals, while we found some evidence of those plans having been approved in the past, there did not appear to be an approval history that went along with those plans. So we're here today requesting essentially the same approval that was shown on the previous plans, and I do believe that we've got a slide that shows the addition. So what's on the plan right there was the addition, and this is with north to the right now, sorry. So that's the west side addition that we're talking about, 20,200 square feet. The original building was here. The first addition was on the south side with a small office bump out. So if you could go to the next slide, please.
Matt, the paper on front of you shows the order of the slides, so if you want
Great,
to
thank
let
you.
Susie know which one.
Appreciate it. So this slide here is the original plan, and I believe this was dated, I know it's really small, 1991 was when this plan was dated, and it shows that same, again, north is to the right, the original building, the addition that was on the south with the office bump out, and then this west addition in the same location and size as what we're currently proposing. Again, in order to kind of complete the record with the town, we were directed to make application both for site plan approval, which is what we're here for tonight, but also given the presence of residential zoning district being at our southeast corner, which is only the shared property portion with the apartments immediately to our west. We also have a couple of variances. We appeared last week at the zoning board meeting to discuss those, and that is for a 100-foot buffer as well as a 100-foot setback, both of which are required within the light industrial zoning to any type of residential use. Generally, all other improvements are abandonment of an on-site septic system, and if we could go to the next slide, which is the utility, there's an on-site septic system along the south edge that will be abandoned along with the tank and pump system that are there now. We will connect to an existing sanitary stub that was extended to the northeast corner of the property, and then run a lateral over from our addition just to help facilitate and avoid cutting through floor slab in order to service that. There's an existing gravel loop road around the perimeter of the building, and that will be paved in accordance with town code as well for access drives within the district. So essentially, we're looking to complete what we thought was the previously approved plan, and understand that we need to bring that up to code and get the approvals in place. We've had initial discussions with Labella on the stormwater comment, which you'll see in the comments that we received, and are working through addressing other town comments. It's our understanding that the board cannot take action tonight because we're still waiting on Ontario County comments. That meeting's tomorrow. And so we do anticipate coming back next month with comments addressed, and hopefully any questions that the board has, we can answer as well.
I believe also that the ZBA is looking at it on December 2nd, right?
Correct.
For their final sign-off.
That's correct, yeah.
So that timing works out well, I think, for the board as well. So,
We do have some slides with elevations and renderings of the building. I'd be happy to have the architect come up and explain, or we can just answer questions that the board may have, whatever your preference is.
go ahead and have the architect present. That way the public here can see as well.
Good evening, Brandel Sickler with SWBR Architects. The proposed addition will be a pre-engineered metal building addition. We will carry the existing office masonry, the decorative masonry as a base around the building, and are proposing to use insulated metal panels for siding panels above that, which is consistent with many of the other buildings in this development. There will be no windows, only exit doors and several loading docks for openings. And that's about it. It's a rectangular addition, pretty simple.
Which face are we looking at with the loading dock? Which east, north?
That is a grade level door, replacing one that is just inside that is covered up by the addition. That is the north side of the building.
Okay.
you're
Looking for
looking at
orientation on your images there, so,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
I did neglect to mention, and this was a question that the zoning board brought up relative to the use of the building or the operations. There's some questions about noise and that kind of thing. So it is a relocation of their sheet metal shop, essentially. The addition will hold stock and have some spiral machines that operate, which are not noise generating. Any type of stamping or anything like that will be as far within the building away from the residential side as possible. But primarily it's putting together ductwork shop before it ships out to their jobs within. We anticipate 25 to 30 employees, not a lot of visitors. We have more than enough parking on site with the existing field that's out there today. So generally, we think it's a great use, but the additional 20,000 square feet is critical to them having enough room for their operation.
So any of that work that goes on, like the overhead doors will be closed and everything, that noise wouldn't escape necessarily if it was,
I'm not 100% sure about that, but I could have John come up and speak
okay.
to that.
I mean, presumably for loading docks, but,
Good evening, John Patterson with Pulsar and Jekyll. The addition is critical, as Matt said, to our operation for the sheet metal. It's mainly, half of the addition would be for warehousing, storage. We fab in the other part, then we store it, stage it, wait for delivery, or, loading the trucks and delivering it. The building's gonna be conditioned, so it wouldn't, the doors would most likely be closed because we wouldn't want to be conditioning the outside.
sure. Okay, great, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anything else, Matt, before I open it up?
That's it. Any questions you guys have, we'd be happy to answer.
Okay, Wes, from LaBella's perspective, anything about this site addition that you're concerned about, or have they answered?
I don't feel like we have any showstoppers. We did release a comment letter today dated November 12th. Comment number one, just about the secret EAF Part 1, lists a 17,000 square foot addition. We just note that the copy that the town keeps for their record should note 20,200 square feet. There is a somewhat of a steep slope on the west side of the building, I believe it is, very small in area. It's a one-on-one slope. The applicant proposes an erosion control blanket. We want them to specify the type, the specific type of erosion control blanket, and just provide some verification that the slope will maintain its stability over the long term. And it looks like we're going to work with the applicant on any stormwater management concerns for water quality treatment, as they do trigger the Arundecoit Creek watershed packet for developers, the thresholds in there. And then I think the landscape buffer comment that we indicated in number 4, the code says whenever a permitted use is in the district located adjacent to any other district, a fully landscaped buffer shall be provided along the full length of the adjacent district. A 100-foot buffer shall be required adjacent to a residential district. So it sounds like that may be addressed partially with the Zoning Board of Appeals if they provide that the variance. I'll defer to the Planning Board as to whether you want to see any additional landscaping in that particular area on the site plan. We don't have a lighting plan. It's possible there's no exterior lighting that's going to be added to the building in and around the outside of the building. And then lastly, I think our architectural consultant did request to get updated drawings, elevation drawings. I know there was a written response to Mark Kukufka's initial comments. I think we'd like to get some of the responses actually depicted on the on the elevation drawings, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, if I could weigh in on those last two. So for the lighting plan, we are going to have building-mounted lighting, and so our next iteration that comes back addressing comments will include that information for the board and for staff. And then prior to the elevation and the renderings that you saw on the screen, we received the comments, so we will also be submitting those for the architectural consultant.
So you are asking for a variance for distance, between you and residential. So lighting, shielding, or, dark sky compliant as per town code will be very important in that
Yeah.
area.
Understood. If I could clarify a couple of things on that as well. We're proposing just to pave to where the limits of the existing gravel are, so not really cutting back. The only spot we're doing that is at that small steep slope area, and that's really as steep as it is to help protect the guy wire and electrical overhead infrastructure that's along that slope. And our building sits down, I don't know if you guys have been to the site, there's 10 to 12 feet in elevation change between us and the driveway for the residential, so we do sit down quite a bit, and while we're not berming or enhancing that buffer just because there isn't room between the vegetation and the building, other than for the driveway, there is a pretty substantial buffer that exists already today.
Thank you. So I'll open it up to the board. Any questions, Joe?
I was concerned with number 4 from Labella with the landscape buffer, and I'm starting to get a better sense just from this conversation. Nonetheless, it is industrial, but it is kind of a stark elevation, and I am just wondering if there is any need for any further landscape buffer to break that up a little bit. So it's not a requirement on my part, but more wondering, I guess, if we want to break that up a little bit. But that's all I've got.
Al?
Yeah, just kind of building on that theme, how much, if any, vegetative buffer would be removed as part of the expansion?
If we can go back to, back about 4 slides from this one. Yep, right there. And I apologize that it's pretty small, but right here in this corner, that's the existing gravel edge, and we're leaving all the vegetation that exists today from there to the residential. So no change to what's out there today. And again, there's about 12 feet in grade change with us being lower from the point on the pavement, sorry for my shaky hand, and the driveway for the residential immediately to our west.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now, thanks. Scott?
I just had a couple of questions. What are the intended hours of operation? Sorry.
I'll have John speak to that.
Yeah, we're generally work with the field hours, and it's 7 to 3:30.
Weekends or?
No, not generally.
Okay. All right. And I guess the other comment or question that I had is I noticed on the drawing that the driveway on the north side goes on to the adjoining property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is that going to be reconciled by some sort of easement, or is?
There's an existing cross-access easement, and I believe within the contract, they're purchasing that north property as well, so it'll be common ownership for 61.
Yep.
Okay. So you're not going to show an easement then? I see a sanitary easement going through there, but you're not going to show between the two parcels.
We need to clarify whether or not the cross-access easement covers that, but regardless, we will have common owner, and we will establish it if it's
Okay.
necessary.
All right. That's all I have.
Okay. Ernie?
Scott asked all my questions.
Okay. This is a public hearing. I will open it up to the public if there are anyone that's interested in, with questions or comments for this application. Now's the time. Seeing or hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move.
Second.
Ernie seconds, Al moves, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. There's really very little left to do between now and the next meeting, so I think that makes sense. And so we can move on to the next application. Thank you. James, before you get going, I'm going to give Marshall Hardy an opportunity if he wishes to go next. Would you like to go next, Marshall? Yep. I'm going to move up your application. This is number 5. It's a final application. We've seen this application a number of times. I believe it's pretty straightforward. It's not a public hearing, and he's looking for, requesting approval of the subdivision for 36.3 acre parcel into 2 lots with the existing home located on Lot R1, 9.5 acres. Sorry, Susie, I'm a little out of order for that, but thank you. This will be the 3rd step in a 3-step process for a major subdivision. Preliminary plan was acknowledged complete August 27th, 2024. Marshall?
All of that is correct. I'm here seeking final subdivision approval, as you state. I've received responses from the code officer and the fire marshal indicating that they're satisfied with all of the changes that have been made to the plans. I just received a letter from the town engineer with his final comments. He's requested that I submit conservation district easements, which I've done, and is reminding me that I need to add a signature block to the final plans. I have no problems with any of that.
Okay. Thank you. As I said, we've seen this several times. A conservation easement was more consolidated in order to make this happen. You'll see on the plan up on the screen. And so I'm going to open up to the floor to, if there are any other questions from the board for this application.
No further questions.
Al? All set. Scott?
The only question I have is, how do we end up on the access easement? Were you able to provide an access easement for?
I have given the town planning board copies of the access easement signed by all the owners.
Okay, great.
Yep, we have that.
Thank you.
Ernie?
Well, this is about the 3rd time I think that we've seen this, so I have no further questions.
Okay. So if there are any outstanding issues, Wes, I think that you guys have been working on it.
Yeah, our November 7th letter, there's just 2 comments in there. The applicant has addressed them, or is working on addressing them, so we have no further comments.
Okay. Thank you. As do I. I think we're pretty satisfied with all the things you've been able to do, and wish you good fortune on making your new home and welcome that. So,
Thank you.
okay. We do have a resolution for approval. Go ahead and read this. For the Hardy subdivision, 7590 North Road, whereas the planning board made the following findings of fact, and there are 10 of them. Resolved that the project Hardy subdivision will not have a significant impact on the environment and hereby issues a negative declaration, and be it further resolved that the planning board hereby issues a waiver to section 2915 of the town's design and construction standards to allow for a total of 4 lots to be served by a common driveway, whereas the standards would otherwise require no more than 3 lots to be served by a common driveway. And now therefore be it resolved that the final subdivision application of Marshall Hardy be approved with the following conditions. Conditions to be addressed prior to the chairman's signature on the site plan. 1, 2, and 4 are all standards. And number 3, that the comments in the letter dated November 7th, 2024 from Labella Associates be addressed. Ongoing conditions, numbers 1, 2, and all 4 of them are standard conditions. And be it further resolved that the planning board secretary distribute the planning board's approval letter. So, to that resolution, do I hear a motion for approval?
A move.
Ernie moves.
Second.
Joe seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed 5-0. So, Marshall, you're all set. I got to explain, I originally had intended to have that one first off this evening, so sorry, James, but I appreciate your rolling without a little bit. So, to that end, application number 2, Storybook Farm Veterinary Hospital. This is a public hearing. 634 Raleigh Road, owner Charles Lill. Applicant is requesting approval to construct a 2,400 square foot expansion to their existing facility to provide additional space for patrons and staff.
Good evening, everyone. I'm James Creticos. I'm with BME Associates. Here with me this evening is Dr. Ann Lill. She's the owner of Storybook Farms, as well as Abby D'Angelo, another one of our engineers from our office. As you just mentioned, we are here for some building expansions and some minor site improvements at the Storybook Farms property. This is located pretty much right at 96 and Main Street Fishers, but it sits behind the Burger King, so it has direct access off Raleigh Road. The property is about 2 acres. It's zoned commercial, and it's also in the 96 overlay district. We were in front of the ZBA last week for a front setback variance. One of the building additions includes a front entrance canopy that is going to basically push into the setback about 6 or 7 feet. So we're asking for like an 8 or 9% relief on that. Same thing with what we'll call the silo feature of the addition, something that kind of fits in with the barn architecture. This also clips over the front setback by a couple feet, but a little bit less than the front entrance canopy. The proposed building additions are basically going to be expanding to the north and south sides of the property. So this is the parking lot side that you see when you enter, as well as kind of the rear side that abuts some town-owned land where that little cemetery kind of sits on the corner. On the north side of our property, there's an existing fence with some kennel structures in the rear there. We're not touching that fence. That's going to remain. We are going to be relocating one of the kennels within those limits. With the building addition, we need to basically push it back to get it out of the way. You can kind of see right here, that's basically this little
Actually, James,
darker color.
If you wouldn't mind, anyone who's applying, please point to that screen because Susie takes that camera
sure.
and aims it at it. So if you're using a laser.
Sure, so the fence isn't shown here, but this is the north elevation here. So basically the fence kind of comes out like this. So right now there's like one of those kennel structures here, and we're just going to kind of kick it out, but keep that fence line the same. The rest of the kennels, we're not touching anything in the back there. The building additions are going to, expand the space that they have for visitors as well as staff. They are very successful veterinary office, one of the few that are in Victor still. So with their growing need, they just want to do some more space in their facility. We did consider a separate building at one point, but this made the most sense economically for them and their business operations. Today, they run about 4 exam rooms regularly, depending on the number of doctors they have there. With this addition, they're going to expand it to 6. But I think they're still going to run primarily 4 regularly. The 2 are just going to be excess if they need to. They're also going to expand some of the break rooms, back of house areas, surgery areas, and just kind of make the space a little bit more amenable to, the visitors and the staff. One of the things with the silo feature is going to be kind of an addition to the waiting room area. And what I explained to the ZBA last week, if you have ever been there when it's very busy in the waiting room, if you have a couple big dogs, it does feel a little crowded. So this will kind of give everybody a little bit more space and make it a little bit more comfortable. In terms of the site improvements, very limited here. We are looking to build 2 new ADA parking spaces in the front, which we are asking for front parking setback relief from this board. The reason for this is because if you've ever been to the site today, the driveway comes in around 10% and it continues that to the parking area. And even the parking area is not ADA compliant for slopes today. So by allowing us to build the 2 parking spaces in the front here, it really keeps our saw cut and limits of disturbing this whole parking lot very minimized. Whereas if we were trying to force the ADA spots here, we would more or less be taking out that whole parking lot to regrade it, to bring it into compliance. So this makes a lot of sense from a functionality standpoint. It does give us a couple extra parking spaces, especially for disabled people. It gets them right close to the front door. If they're carrying a carrier, this will make it a lot shorter of a distance and a lot more manageable with appropriate slopes and ramps and things of that nature. We're not doing anything with the water service or sanitary service. Today, the sanitary all drains to a little grinder pump that's in the back, and this, I believe, discharges through a force main that comes up around this area and connects to the last run on the town-owned stairway that just is in the southeast corner of our property. We're not proposing any landscaping at this point. The only thing we're taking out with the building addition and site work is the foundation plantings. We do have intent to replace the foundation plantings. However, I think the final color materials of the building haven't been selected, so we're kind of waiting to do all that in conjunction. But as of today, there's no vegetation in the front lawn area. It's all lawn today, and we intend to keep it that way just to keep the visibility of the structure. The additions really fit in with what's there today, all barn features. We're not really expanding to anybody. We don't have any immediate adjoining neighbors besides obviously Burger King to the west of us. There's plenty of existing vegetation. You barely can see from our property into that. For parking, we are requesting or proposing another 5 land bank parking spaces. Today, we're basing the parking needs based off of those 6 exam rooms, 2 cars per exam room, so 12 spaces plus about 10 for the employees. So that's where we kind of get to that 22, 23 number. But if they do have additional need immediately, they do park a couple spots here in front of the dumpsters, as well as can kind of block their own employee entrance in the back if they really need to. But this gives them flexibility to come and expand that if the demand grows that much. In terms of stormwater, we don't need to do anything for that. We're well below 1 acre, and we're actually below the Arundecoit Creek threshold as well. So we're just proposing erosion control measures just to keep the site contained. But besides that, that's basically our application. I can answer any questions you guys have about the business, about the rest of the site work, but we do understand we can't take any action tonight. County planning is tomorrow, so we will be back in front of you guys on the 10th. If we can't answer anything tonight, we'll obviously provide it before then.
We hope we can give you enough information that you don't have to go too much into depth at the next meeting and can address anything between now and then. So you are correct, the county has it, so we don't have that approval yet. And ZBA also on December 2nd for your
Correct.
setbacks, correct? So with that, I'll open up questions from the board. Ernie, I start with you. Mix it up.
Since nobody's asked my questions yet, I'll
Yeah, right.
Am I looking at an outdoor section here for the animals to,
It's all existing today, so
I'm sorry, I could hear.
there's existing outdoor kennels today.
Yeah.
They don't offer any kenneling services to the public. They're mainly used to house and transfer dogs based on internal shuffling. And they do offer space for employees' animals, though. Like if you bring your dog to work, they do allow some of those. But in terms of kenneling, that isn't part of their business anymore.
Yeah, well, I only ask because once in a while, I'm down in that area and I can hear the dogs barking. Is there some way to minimize that?
It was a service that they used to offer to patrons, kenneling, but like I said, it's not something that they offer anymore. It's really just an amenity now in terms of that. In terms of neighbors, I don't really think there's anybody that we're impacting with the locations of this, being that
I don't
we're.
think there is either, but I can hear it from down, by the bank down below.
Okay. We'll discuss it with them and see if there's any, noise mitigation issues, and we'll try and nail down exactly what the, full use of those kennels is to come back and explain to you guys at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have anything.
Al?
No questions, just a comment. I mean, I'm familiar with the operations, and I think all the proposed enhancements are good upgrades to the facility and the ADA parking, so I'm good.
Okay, Joe?
I was interested in the discussion about the up fixtures for the lighting. And is there any existing lighting like that on property now?
No, there's not, and that was just one of the architectural features that the architect wanted to incorporate. We got the comment back from Labella about not having, or I believe it was code enforcement too, about not having the lights angled above 45 degrees, which is completely acceptable. It was one of those things that we said we might as well just submit it and see how you guys react to it. It is something that we would like to incorporate into the project. We do feel like it will add some kind of nice visualization, especially on the silo feature as you're kind of rounding the bend, and give some extra visibility to the property at the after hours. They do close at 6, so these lights aren't going to be, on super late into the evening anyways.
Okay, thank you.
Just for your information, like as Labella has said, the code calls for downlighting, and we have enforced that with the Holiday Inn across the way. They have those blue lights that go up and down. We asked them to keep them downlit, so I think they relocated them. Plus, they also had some landscaping lights up on the building, which we asked them to remove as well. So in addition to that, sconces with up and down lighting, I think that's not acceptable as long as they're downlighting. So you might want to look at the lighting plan to see if you make downlighting to enhance, to do the same issue on that architectural element, you could probably solve that issue by using downlighting rather than having it go up.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a look at what we're proposing for the illumination, and we'll get something back to you guys before the next meeting, absolutely.
Okay.
Or eliminate the
Yeah.
fixtures.
Well, from my perspective, this building is within the Route 96 Architectural Overlay District.
Correct.
I think the style and the enhancement goes along with the business. I think you did a nice job with it. Certainly, if you look at it and say this is a vet building, it makes sense. It looks kind of like, it fits that theme. So I appreciate that. It's not just a QB box addition. So I think it'll go well in that area. Wes, any comments from you, from Labella?
Yeah, sure. No major showstoppers, no showstoppers at all here from Labella's perspective. Several comments that just have to do with drawing notations or slight modifications. Nothing big there. We did comment on the parking setback request, where they're requesting the accessible spots be within the 80-foot setback for parking, and they, based on their letter, I'm just going to quote here, due to the existing parking lot grades, ADA spaces cannot be incorporated in the parking area without extensive removal and regrading. Moreover, the proposed location of the ADA parking spaces will help reduce the travel length and disabled person may need to transport a pet carrier to and from the main entrance. We don't see anything objectionable to that request. And then I'm happy to take a look at the architectural lighting components with the applicant. I noted in Chapter 131 -11, there's some permissible architectural lighting, so we'll double check that. And then lastly, the architect from Labella did review the project and indicates that the colored building elevations and rendering feel like that the application is in compliance with the objectives of the Route 96 251 overlay district, so we have no objection to that either. So that's it.
Thanks, Wes. So James, this is a public hearing. I'm going to open up the floor to public if anyone's interested in commenting, asking questions of the developer, applicant. Once, twice, okay, seeing none. You will be back in December, but I think we've vetted this quite a bit with this application, so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move.
Al moves.
Second.
Ernie seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried 5-0. So public hearing is closed, and we will see you
In a month. Perfect. Thank you very much,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you. Next application, the Vincent Minor subdivision. The owner is Christopher Vincent. Applicant is requesting approval to subdivide 20.414 acre parcel into 2 lots. This is at 104 Baker Road. Lot 1 will consist of an existing home with 18.345 acres, and Lot 2 will consist of 2.069 acres. Applicant here for that? Come on up.
Hello, my name's Chris Vincent. I plan to sell or subdivide 2.069 acres on my current 20.414 acre lot. It would be on the bottom, I believe that's the south end corner, right on Valentine Road and Baker Road where they meet.
There is a laser pointer if you'd like to use it.
Sure. Right here. So here's Baker Road. Comes all the way up and turns into Thayer. And then right down here, there's a cornfield, approximately 4 to 5 acres. And Valentine Road goes right through it.
There is a house on this lot now up at the northerly
There
end,
is right up here. That's the current house.
but the driveway goes north, correct?
Yep, the driveway comes up right where Baker Road and Thayer meet.
Okay. So just for orientation, for everyone's sake, there's a lot of relief here.
Yeah, there's a lot of leaf up there, a lot of wind, a lot of leaf.
Most of it is wooded?
Yeah, right up here is another parcel that's 6.6 acre cornfields that we own as well. Obviously, you can see the power lines coming up through on this side. And all of this is wooded. There's basically 3 big ridgebacks that come through there.
Okay. Questions for the board? Want to start again, Ernie?
No, I don't have anything on this one.
Okay.
It's pretty straightforward.
Giving you an opportunity to not be, Go ahead, Scott.
I guess I assume that the lot that is being subdivided is conforming with all the zoning requirements in terms of area, size, width, depth, all that.
Yeah,
I
as per your
assume Labella checks
Code
that.
enforcement said.
Well, I guess one of the questions that we have is whether or not the lot is a buildable lot, right? Typically with a subdivision, if there's an applicant looking to subdivide a parcel, we want to see that there's an opportunity for either a septic system and also lot access, so ingress and egress with site distances. So there doesn't seem to be any indication as to where a potential driveway might be located and identification that there is safe access to the lot.
Sure.
So if the planning board were to move forward with considering to approve this subdivision, I think you've got to be cautious as a board to identify that this is not a buildable lot until such time that somebody comes back with a site plan and confirms.
Hang on a second, Ron. Ron, before,
I'm a registered professional engineer, and I can answer all those questions.
yeah, but Ron,
if
I
I could
need you
get-
to step up to
Yes.
the mic, though, in order to do
Yeah,
that. So
but that was the
we'll
next
give you an
step, right?
opportunity in a minute.
All right, we'll do.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I think I firmly understand sight lines, septic, sewage, all that. I think is my understanding that was the next step of the permit process. So right now, the real intent is just to subdivide the land. And we haven't seen any kind of things out there that say, hey, there's a showstopper in any way.
Okay. Well, that's part of the planning process for creating a lot, is to identify that there is safe access and that there's adequate water and sewer. So.
Yeah, I will say that.
It's up to the planning board, it's their prerogative as to whether or not they want to move forward with the application as it stands, or, and maybe have a site plan come back at a later date, or if they want to have it done now.
Yeah, I will say there is there's 3 other owners on the other side of the road. One of the driveways is basically about right here, and then the other is right here. There's already properties on the other side of Baker Road with driveways inlet.
Yeah, part of the conversation is about, that, I don't know if there's sewer here?
No
So you'd have to have, if you're going to sell as a lot, that person is then going to have to come before the board,
Correct.
make sure that it's buildable lot, and prove that with engineering. And we'll get to you in a minute, Ron. And also that the slopes work. And so there's a host of things that we generally look at when we subdivide a lot, just to make, for your protection as much as anyone's.
Sure.
So there's going to be a parcel out there that hasn't been shown to be able to be approved as a buildable lot until such time as the engineering comes through. So that'll be a risk that someone who buys that lot takes. Okay, just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Al, questions?
Well, I think that's really the one and only concern, so.
Okay, Joe?
Nope.
Okay. I think I've kind of said my piece. I know that Ron's here, Ron Santola. I just happen to know him professionally, so did you have something you wanted to address, Ron? Just come up to the mic and identify yourself for the record. And
First of all, when I drove into the village of Victor tonight, it brought back a lot of memories, because all those streets were designed by a firm and myself that I worked on many, many years ago, and it's good to see that they're still in good shape. I'm a registered professional engineer. I work for Approved Engineering. Prior to that, I worked for the city of Rochester, Monroe County, and I got numerous projects under my belt. And Chris is going to be my future son-in-law, and this is my stepdaughter over here and my wife. And we are looking forward to building a house in Victor. And when he offered me the opportunity to buy a couple acres, I jumped at it, and I said yes. So I just recently sold land that I got down in Allegheny County, and I did a lot of bridges down there. If you look at Allegheny County website, you're going to see this beautiful arch structure. That's one that I designed. But anyhow, I see we're going to have a challenge with the hill. And about 30 or 40 yards
off Baker Road. There's a little stream that goes through there. And I've already done some preliminary hydraulics from that. I can do all that. And I also work for an engineering firm, Pruden Engineering, which just moved out to Pittsford, not too far from here. And then if I can run it through them or not, I can do the hydraulics work and I can sign it and stamp it. Right now, I'm looking at a couple of perhaps 2 24-inch PVC pipes, 20 feet long. And there's a small ditch. It goes down, it comes up about 4 or 5 feet. I asked the surveyor to go out and give me more elevations on that so I can set the elevations, but if not, I can buy a transit and I can do the work myself. And I work for a firm, I can have them stamp it or come out just to verify it. And then going up the slope, I'm going to retain a geotechnical engineer because I want to do some boreholes up there just to find out if there's any layers of clay, because I don't want to put a house into a slope knowing that it's going to come down sometime in the future. But as a professional engineer, it's going to be done right. The house is going to be built. It's going to be stable. It's probably going to be 12-inch solid concrete walls. The septic system, I can design that, but if necessary, it's going to be coming down the hill, probably in an 8-inch, 6 or 8-inch pipe coming down to be a leach field someplace along the side of the hill. I'm not sure where we got, but it's all subject to having a geotechnical engineer give me the boring so I know what I got to work with. But it's going to be done right, and I'm looking forward to moving out here.
Okay. Any questions for Ron, as long as he's up there from the board's perspective?
No, it actually sounds like you're well aware of the issues that we're raising regarding the property and the buildability, so that's nice to know.
I currently have HASBA architects working on a site plan, and in order to get up the hill, we're going to have the house pretty much perpendicular to Baker Road, and then the garage is going to be flared about a 45-degree angle. So as you come up Baker Road, you're going to come down to the southernmost part, come up, wrap around, and then once I get the better survey, because right now the survey is all LiDAR, and I can't work off of that, so if I have to have a better survey, I can go out and do it, or have my firm that I work with do it, so I get the better elevations, because you're going to ask those kind of questions when I bring a site plan in for review. And I've known Joe Logan for many years, worked with him as a sub-consultant for Fisher Associates, and he knows me, and he knows the type of work that I do in the firm that I work with does.
Anyone else? Scott?
Well, I think that's a real good understanding of what you need to do for the property, but I think it also, speaking for myself, if I were going to do what you're proposing to do, I think I'd want to have confidence that the property lines I'm creating will...
Property lines are?
The property lines that you're creating as part of the subdivision that's being proposed, I would want to know that I have adequate room to do what I intend to do with respect to design. I think you've got the cart before the horse, quite honestly.
Probably can't see the dimensions, but all the dimensions are located, and the house would be centered right in the middle of the property.
I understand, but you were just mentioning about a geotechnical, septic system, piping, drainage, and all that sort of thing. And I guess, not to mention a driveway access coming out there with respect to the other driveways. And I just wondered why you would want to lock yourself into a parcel size without having reconciled all the things that you just mentioned to us.
I'm an engineer, and it'll be taken care of. I've done this
You're
many,
going
many
to
years.
make it work? Is that what you're saying?
It'll work, yes. I have full confidence I wrote down about the property. I can show you where the driveway is going to be. I can show you where the driveway is going to wrap around. If you'd like to go out there and visit the site.
When we get the site plan, you will certainly have to do that, but I'm just trying to follow up to what Wes said. And we've required this on other subdivisions as well, where we've at least asked the applicant to show a tentative driveway location, a tentative house location, so we can take a look at it and understand that that the feasibility is there for what we're talking about.
Not a problem. The driveway is going to be at the southern end of the property. And the reason it's going to be there is because of site distance going down to Valentine Road. Then as you go up, there's plenty of site distance. I've already got the calculations for that. I don't have them with me, but I know it's got to be done because you're going to be asking that question in the future. The site distance is adequate. And there's no, it's a straight uphill run, so you haven't got any vertical curves to work with.
Ernie?
You've purchased this entire parcel, whole thing, all of it I see in here?
I'd like to, but it's just going to be the corner.
Just that one? Just that one.
Yeah, just the lower right-hand corner.
Okay, well, what's on the other parcel?
I'm sorry?
What's on the rest of it?
If you can point to the lower right-hand corner where the red line is.
Yeah.
The laser up there, Ron.
I'm sorry?
You have a laser there for your use.
There we go.
Try the other screen, though.
Point that one.
Which one?
Yeah.
This is the parcel that we're looking at buying right here.
Yeah.
The driveway is going to come right off right here, and then the driveway is probably going to come up. The house is going to be located someplace in this area. I don't want to have it up here because it's too hard to get up the top of that hill. But I want to be far enough away from Valentine Road so I don't hear the road noise. So my guess, based on the contours, I don't like the contours they got, but I want to have this, I already put a request in the survey, or to give me a better survey of this area here, and also to give me the grading of that stream, because I'm going to probably line the back of that stream with heavy riprap, or, I don't know if you've ever been out to Hilton, but there's a beautiful house out there. They got huge pieces of slab rock, and I'm trying to find out where they bought that, because I'd like to line that ditch and have it all matted so that it's not going to erode in the future. I've got pictures I can show you on my cell phone, but I want to do it right. I don't want to put a driveway up there, in there, and have it come apart in the future years.
Ernie, anything else?
I guess not for now.
Well, obviously, your eyes are wide open when you're looking at the site, knowing what the constraints are, knowing that's going to be a risk that you're taking to not have it all engineered out before you take on these property lines, as Scott was saying. So, from my perspective, I don't see an issue other than what's been mentioned to providing the subdivision opportunity now. So, but it is a public hearing, so I would like to open up if there's anyone, residents in the area, neighbors that have any questions for the applicant.
Yes.
Name and address, please.
David Palmer, Valentine Road. It's a swamp, it's wetlands.
Can you, on that property?
That
we're talking
property,
about?
there's lots of that's all wetlands. Chris, water supply is from that wetlands. And years ago, a couple of years ago, I was standing here, and Valentine Meadows development, they had to stay so many feet away from those creeks. He couldn't even go over the creek. This gentleman's going to be going over the creek. How does that work?
Is this a Blue Line Creek, Ron? Is there?
Can I answer that question? Because I disagree with this assessment.
Oh, hang on. We can't talk without you being in the mic, in front of the microphone. So you're welcome to continue any thoughts you had. If you want Ron to answer that question.
Valentine Meadows had to stay away from the creek.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't even put a sluiceway, a culvert in to move that one driveway. And this gentleman's gonna go over that creek.
I don't see
That
it.
water
Look at
flows
this map.
east.
It isn't shown.
But Valentine Meadows flows west. Is that a difference?
I guess I would ask that when the application does come before the board, that, I mean, obviously those
You know,
environmental
in
concerns
your
have to be
plan,
addressed.
in your plans, he has to stay away from wetlands.
He does, if there's wetlands. And you have to be delineated.
That supplies the creek that goes down by.
Well, before he gets into that, we're going to have to make sure that any wetlands are identified by the state and/or federal jurisdiction wetlands. I don't see them here, but we don't have all those records, so he would have to show that they are not. And if there are wetlands that have to be
There's all
delineated.
springs up in there.
Understood.
It
There's,
supplies the creek.
so, I appreciate you bringing that to everyone's attention. Our engineer certainly will be looking at it when that application comes.
He opens up that hill, what are you gonna find?
So, just for the record, right now, what's the project in front of us? There is absolutely no development proposed with the project that's in front of us.
He's subdividing, he's gonna do something.
Yeah, he's subdividing, creating a lot line, and once we have plans for development, we'll be able to evaluate how that's going to impact these resources that you're speaking of. I think these are valuable comments, so I want to thank you for sharing them. we'll be able to better assess how this development, if they do propose development, what the conflict will be with the resources.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
I can address his comment if I could.
Do you want to, if you have a response to
I
that?
have a photograph of what he's referring to, and I can pass this to you to show you
Ed-
what this looks like. It's not an issue. There's no wetlands on this property. There's a few cattails.
So,
There are no designated wetlands. I'm a registered professional engineer. I check with the DEC. I've got the maps. There is no registered federal wetlands at all.
Might not be a federal, but it's wetland.
There's cattails. A couple cattails is not considered a wetland.
Even Chris's water supply is that water, that wetland.
I'd like to respond to my water supply, just to make this quick. I'll definitely say there's some runoff that comes down the road. I think the town's all obviously put in new culverts all down there in Valentine, so I think the hydraulic studies have been done. And I think everything's updated as far as what's wetlands, what's not, what's a creek. If you look at the property directly to the right of it, about 200 yards down the hill is my well, which is shallow well that comes off a spring. So it's pretty far up from this property. And even my septic, my current septic, and the leach ponds go up the property line towards the top of the map. So everything's pretty far away from what we're talking about as the subdivision.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
It still is public hearing, it's still open. Anyone else from the public have a question, comment, or information for the board or the applicant? Hearing. Did I get you guys yet? No? Okay. Joe? You good? Okay. Any other thoughts, Wes, comments?
No, not right now.
Okay.
I just have one comment.
Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Here I am going this way, not looking here.
Yeah, Melissa Allen, 175 Baker Road. I just want to say, we know Chris and Melissa well, and it's good to see. I just wanted to comment that we were concerned when we saw the property was going to be subdivided, but it's nice to see that it's going to be subdivided to stay within the family, however the development turns out. We enjoy the private wooded area on that side that your property holds, so thank you.
Thank you. Floor's still open. All right, seeing no other comment, interest in making comments, I'll entertain a motion from the board to close the public hearing. I'll move. Did I hear a second?
Mm-hmm. It was Ernie.
Ernie seconds.
In behind Star.
Hi, over there.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, carried 5-0. So public hearing is closed. And-
I guess I think if, given the discussion we've had, if they're willing to take the risk, then I think we've set our piece.
Yep. Certainly eyes wide open for what's to come. So I do have a resolution for approval of this subdivision. It's a minor subdivision. Whereas the planning board made the following findings of fact, and this is notwithstanding the comments that we received regarding the water, because that will come forward again once the lot comes before the board to develop. So all that engineering information and discussion will happen, research, and will come before the board. So as a necessity. Sorry, what are you saying there? Okay. All right. Wes is letting me know he has an extra item to add to this, whereas the planning board made the following findings of fact, and there are 8 of them, plus one that Wes would like to add.
Yeah, the one I might suggest that the planning board consider adding here as a finding is that the planning board cannot make any assurances with regard to whether the parcel being created would be developable or whether lot lines created as part of this subdivision would need to be reconfigured so as to create a buildable lot.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. That's good. Okay. And Lisa will get a copy of that and certainly hear it on the recording. So whereas the Town of Victor Planning Board reviewed the unlisted action on November 12th, 2024 and identified no significant impacts, now therefore be it resolved that the project Vincent Minor subdivision will not have a significant impact on the environment and a negative declaration be prepared. Now therefore be resolved that the application of Venezia Land Surveyors be approved with the following conditions. Conditions that must be met prior to chairman signing the minor subdivision plan. Number 1 is standard. Number 2, standard. 3 is standard. Number 4, the comments in the letter dated November 7th, 2024 from LaBella Associates be addressed. Number 5, the applicant shall be aware that approval of a subdivision does not mean that the parcel is an approved building lot. Site plan approval is required prior to it becoming a buildable lot and before a building permit can be issued. And number 6, that satisfactory perk tests be witnessed and obtained by the town engineer's office before issuance of a building permit. Conditions that are ongoing, standard conditions that must be adhered to. Both of them are standard, and be it further resolved that the planning board secretary distribute the planning board's approval letter. So on that resolution as modified by Wes, do I hear a motion?
I'll move.
Scott moves.
Second.
Al seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried 5-0. Okay. So, that is it for the public hearings this evening. We have several more applications. Number 5, Stover subdivision. This is not a public hearing, as I said. Benson Road. Owner Todd Stover. Applicants requesting acknowledgement of a complete application for the subdivision of an 11.6 acre parcel into 3 residential lots. This is the first step of a major subdivision, and only acknowledgement of a completed application will be considered at this meeting. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Steve Schultz with MRB Group, here tonight with Todd Stover, the property owner and applicant. He intends to subdivide his 11.6 acre parcel at the northwest corner of Lower Fishers and Benson Road into 3 residential lots. The zoning of the property is limited development district, and 1 acre lots are permitted as public water is present along the east side of Benson Road. So each lot will have a water service and a septic system. The areas respectively are Lot 1, 2.76 acres, Lot 2, 2.75, and Lot 3, 6.08. We've done perk tests, all the lots and deep holes. They're all witnessed by a representative of LaBella, and we're all within acceptable limits, all ranging from probably 10 to 45 minutes or so. After running 3 or 4 times, they were all pre-soaked. So we'll use those with a 4-bedroom house, and the rough representative areas are shown on the plan as to the size of the septic system that'll be needed. We do have a conservation easement proposed on the west side of the property over here that is makes up 50% of the property as required by code. You can't see it on this plan, but the larger lot on the south end here is 6.1 acres, and there's a existing Quonset hut type shed along Lower Fishers Road that we intend to keep on the property.
Susie, can you go backwards 1 slide? There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, right in here.
There you go.
And that is has a small driveway right off of Lower Fishers. So that'll be maintained. There is a small stream that cuts through this lower lot, which is another reason why it's so large. So there are setbacks associated with that, as we found out during our pre-application meeting. So we have 75 feet for any buildings and 100 feet for septic. So we're out of those limits there, which is why we created the larger lot. All the homes will be off Benson Road, all driveways off Benson Road.
What's the intent with the barn, that shed there? Is that to maintain it, retain it?
Yep, he plans to keep it, and it was kind of run down. He's fixed it up nicely. It looks really, really good now, and uses it to store his small tractor and some other gardening type stuff.
Okay, thanks.
And we have received some conceptual comments from LaBella and town staff, and I think the one that was kind of running between all of them was the conservation easement, and to kind of eliminate the Quonset hut from consideration of the area for the easement. And we have plenty of space to do that.
Sure. Okay, well, on that note, Wes, any other things, or do you want to comment on his?
Yeah, Labella had a very, very brief comment letter dated November 8th. We wanted to talk a little bit about open space with the planning board. And the comment was that since this is a major subdivision, it's being classified as a major subdivision, 50% of the gross land area must be set aside for open space, right? So we wanted the planning board to consider whether the proposed conservation easement as depicted is suitable, or whether some of our other configuration of open space or arrangement that considers maybe encompassing a portion or all of the stream buffer that's on the parcel. There's a stream buffer, a 75-foot wide stream buffer that maybe could also be used towards the 50% open space requirement if maybe there wasn't a need for as much conservation easement area, or maybe that's the area you put in the conservation easement. Just some dialogue to
So,
see.
Wes, as you look at an open space conservation easement, it's pretty much anything goes except putting a structure on the property. So I'm not sure what that does relative to a stream buffer in general. And quite frankly, you could have 2.76 acres of lawn under the terms of an open space easement. So not only, I think, should we look at that buffer in particular, but maybe something more restrictive like a site-specific easement to accommodate that buffer and maybe some other features. If you look at the properties around this property, it is brush, woods, very much a rural characteristic, and I don't think an open space in general is suitable for this type of property.
Is there a difference between conservation easement and open space?
Open space is a type of conservation easement, which is it's the least restrictive.
Okay.
And it pretty much allows for no impervious structures or like parking lots, paved areas, et cetera, et cetera. Site-specific spells out, for instance, what we would do to protect that stream buffer from being damaged or diverted or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if the most restrictive no touch would be appropriate, but certainly something that spells out in more particulars what can and can't be done.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe, thanks for those
Okay.
comments. I was just asking Wes about the one lot that's Lot 3. You're showing a house on the very northeast corner, is it?
Yep.
Kind of hemmed in a little bit with that lot and that house. And I don't know whether the grading on this drawing up on the screen is existing or proposed grading around.
It's existing.
It's existing, so you don't have to do.
Well, no, we didn't, since it's a sketch plan, we didn't
Yeah.
do the grading.
No, understood. I'm just saying that you won't have to do a lot of regrading in that area. I mean, it looks like you'd have to just flatten that space.
Yeah, we have to, it has to stay similar because we have a septic system, so we
Yeah,
really
but-
can't alter the grades a
And you
whole
can't really
lot.
build anything out further south from there because you've got that
Because we end up in the
75-foot
stream.
buffer and
Yep.
then the 100-foot stream setback, septic setback, and, you're kind of hemming yourself in with that one lot.
Yeah, and I've talked to Todd about that, and he's aware that, he's limited to that corner. We also looked at coming off Lower Fishers Road possibly, but it wasn't really that conducive. It kind of drops off
Okay.
a lot more, so, I mean, there is space from a buffer standpoint, but it just didn't seem like as buildable and accessible, so we just used that upper corner of the lot.
Yeah, I was just trying to square some of Joe's comments with what I'm looking at on your plan and where you're kind of shoehorning it in right in that corner.
Yep.
So, okay, thanks. Sorry, Joe, anything else? Al?
No, nothing else.
Okay, Scott?
I'm familiar with this property because I did a concept on it for a prior owner, so
Okay.
this was kind of a deja vu when I looked at it. I think you have it laid out in a very similar way to how I had it laid out. I guess question I had was concerning the conservation easement, and if the board is asking the engineer to change the configuration of the conservation easement so as to enable that building along Lowers Fisher Road, or if there's something else that the board wants the engineer to do.
I think it's more a question on how they're approaching the layout rather than, because it looks like if you go along Lower Fisher's Road, there's no space other than where that shed is.
Right.
To put a house.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because everything else is like, I'll call it wetlands, but it's a buffer for the stream.
Yeah.
You can't really put anything down there.
You've got, well, if you take the setback, the Quonset hut is encroaching on the setback, and then you
Right, I
got the
mean,
stream
right.
buffer.
This whole area,
Yeah.
that's a big wide swath, right?
You can't really do anything with it.
Yeah, well, I didn't
Whether it
know if
was in a
the,
conservation easement or not, it seems to me the 75-foot buffer each way of the tributary, that's effectively a conservation easement.
Yeah.
we could have our conservation easement follow that. The only thing kind of difficult about it is you have to monument those, or,
You do, that makes it a little
If it
complicated.
zigs and
I mean,
zags a
You could make
lot.
some straight lines if you wanted to, I
yeah,
suppose.
so it wouldn't truly
This-
follow exactly the 75 feet, but
Right.
it could be close.
That would be a nightmare.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, honestly, you could do some chords.
Yeah.
2 or 3 chords,
Yeah.
not a lot.
Yeah.
And make it easier for everyone to enforce and/or
Yeah.
help monitor.
We had
the
that
site.
once before, as I recall, remember? The
Yeah,
one on
oh,
Mountain
yeah,
Hill?
no, zigzagging everywhere, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So-
I just wasn't sure if the Quonset hut can be, this here can be in it, but you just exclude the amount of area that's impervious, and as long as you have enough that,
I would give it a
Make
little
up
bit
for
of
that?
buffer around it to, have the building plus, 25 feet or something right
I
around.
mean, we
it.
could go around it with
Do they,
with the
yeah, do they
easement.
have to reconfigure the conservation easement to kind of go around that thing if it's not
Yeah.
allowed to be in a conservation easement?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, That
the
was
surveyor
the
or
I
question.
mean,
something.
you could do a conservation easement that starts from one corner and goes straight over there.
Right.
For instance.
Right.
That kind of constricts the third lot to a major piece of conservation easement, so that doesn't help you much. But you certainly have to,
Still have to opt out the
Include that.
Quonset hut, right?
yeah. So, I think I'm hearing, we're open to, if you want to make a
Make some
configuration
adjustments.
change, to make some adjustments.
Yep, we can do that.
You know.
I mean, the goal with this was to keep everything up closer to Benson Road and leave this open and,
Yeah, I mean, your
and,
contours kind of
Yeah.
run this curve
Yeah.
anyway, so,
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
yeah,
with the conservation easement.
yeah. I mean, you don't
That
have to know
diagonal?
exactly, pick a couple of points
Yeah,
and define it.
Yeah.
And if it's more convenient for you the more usable land that, for instance, there's a knob, like right here, I think. that I'm looking at on my
Yeah.
computer so I can see that, but, right now it's partly in the conservation easement. Do you really want it in the conservation easement, or, you can use that can be usable land
yeah.
or playground set or so, who knows, just,
Maybe you want to just take a look at it with respect to
The
the.
conservation easement, what is allowed to be done in it?
it depends on the nature of the conservation easement for one, but if you can have a totally restrictive conservation easement you can't even touch. But there are conservation easements that you can mow the lawn in that you
Is
just
that
can't
what's
build
going to be
anything on.
required for this subdivision? Is it going to be
Uh,
something you can't touch, or is it?
Not. Good question.
What do you want?
Well, again, we can make it site-specific and define it.
Right, I
Have you
mean,
visited the conservation board?
You can come up
Have they been before the conservation board?
with the tone who you are.
Sure. Hi, I'm Todd Stover, I'm the property owner. I didn't have a specific plan on that. The intent is to subdivide and to basically sell. And so, for some of this discussion, I feel like that's, the next person who's looking to buy it, that, some of that's their idea, so.
well, we do have to define the conservation easements before you're able to subdivide
Sure.
and sell the lot, so they know what the conservation easement limitations are.
Yep.
So you certainly don't want to hem in one property in favor of another one,
Sure.
right? And so we're just trying to work with you a little bit to see if you care to have more flexibility with Lot 1 than you have right now. And that would be some trade-off there for Lot 3, but Lot 3 has got a ton of land on it, and
And I think that, what you've said is acceptable.
Mhm.
I mean, as Steve said, this is a, first pass at the idea on
Sure.
it, so there is some wiggle room on my part.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, we can make the adjustments. And we'll definitely exclude the Quonset hut and the driveway from it, and
Yeah,
then,
and look
see
at the
what works
creek to
out.
make sure you can protect as much of it as, you certainly don't want any, you're not going to be able to touch anything on the creek limits anyway, but
Yep,
take
you're right.
advantage of it, I guess.
Yep, okay.
To answer Scott, it did go to the Conservation
did?
Board, but they looked at it sketch, so they didn't have too many comments.
Okay.
But when he does submit preliminary, it'll go back to
Okay.
them, and I can submit the 3 easements, and you guys can talk with them.
So we'll meet with them.
Yep,
Is that
you'll
right?
meet with the Conservation Board again during preliminary.
Yeah, and tonight is really more of a complete sketch application determination rather than, details.
Yeah.
So we're giving you some feedback. I hope that you
Oh,
take
yeah.
it.
No, that's
and
helpful.
Are able to use it. So, did I get everybody?
Yeah, I think it looks like a good project, and I'm certainly not very high density, so I like that.
Ernie?
What's that thing?
That's a Quonset hut.
That's the Quonset hut that they've been kind of referring to.
Glad you used the pointer.
As long as he didn't blind me, it's like, get back.
I'm doing my best to stay away.
Okay.
All right.
So like I said, it's not a public hearing. Any other comments from the board or Lobella? Okay. Any other thoughts you had or questions you had for us before we, like I said, it's a complete sketch plan
No,
application. There's refinement to be made.
Yeah. No, I think we're off to a good start. And
Okay.
like I said, we'll make our adjustments on the conservation and submit some updated plans.
Okay. So with that, I have a resolution for a complete sketch plan application. It by no means is an approval of the plan. It's basically that the application has everything we need to move forward with this application. So, whereas the planning board made the following findings of fact, there are 8 of them. Now therefore be it resolved that regarding the sketch plan application of Ted Stover, major subdivision entitled Vincent Subdivision, the planning board acknowledges receipt of a complete sketch plat application, and be it further resolved that the planning board secretary forward a copy of this resolution to the applicant. Motion for approval?
Move it.
Second.
Now moves, Ernie seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried 5-0.
Okay, thank you.
On to the next step. You're welcome. So, Stonebrook subdivision is the next one. This is also not a public hearing. 1403 East Victor Road, the owner Woodstone Custom Homes. Applicants requesting approval to create a clustered subdivision of 44 buildable lots on 100 acres in the town of Victor with 15-plus acres in the town of Farmington for a total of 115 acres. This would be Section 1 of a 2-phase development. This will be the 3rd step in a 3-step process for a major subdivision. Preliminary plan was acknowledged complete September 27th, 2022. So it's been a couple of years since we've seen this, but you have, and it's an interesting application, quite large, but good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Cole Papasergi with Marathon Engineering. With me today is the development team, Jeff Smith and Tim Smith from Woodstone. We're here today requesting final Section 1 subdivision approval for Stone Brook subdivision. As mentioned, it's been a while since you've last seen this. This was given preliminary overall approval back in 2022 as part of a Town Law 278 for 85 lots. And this is a 116 acre plus or minus development, with part of it being in the town of Victor and a small portion of it being in the town of Farmington. Section 1 of this development will be 44 lots, and it will have access over on East Victor Road, which this is East Victor Road. So the whole subdivision is located east of East Victor Road and to the southwest of Mud Creek. It is also bordered by Auburn Trail to the south, and Boca Estates subdivision is to the west. It will have access off of East Victor Road and Stonecrest, and there will be sidewalks on both sides of just one side of the roadway. As part of preliminary overall, additional sidewalk was added in a couple spots up by the north side of Suncrest and connecting to Fieldcrest. So I'm going to just give a brief overview of the project since it's been so long. As part of market conditions and economic factors, there's been a pause, but here before you today, ready to have this approved. For section 1 of Stonebrook, will just be this portion here. During preliminary overall and earlier phases of the project, it was identified that traffic was a concern by the residents and the board of going through the subdivision. So roadway reconfiguration happened to better design the subdivision to have residents flow to East Victor Road rather than through the subdivision to the west. Additionally, drainage was a big concern for the board at that stage. For the back units of Boca Estates. So we are designing the subdivision as a whole to mimic existing conditions. There was previously a portion of the drainage basin that would drain to Boca Estates, and we are picking up a large majority of that and draining it to our stormwater management, which will greatly reduce the drainage impacts over to that neighboring subdivision.
Can you identify the stormwater management area? Is that
Yep. So there's 2 stormwater management areas, and they will both be constructed during section 1. There's a bioretention up to the north and a stormwater management facility over to the east. Again, at preliminary overall level, there was discussions about different options for connecting into sanitary. It was discussed with the town and the town of Farmington as well, that the best route to connect sanitary was through Boca Estates subdivision on Suncrest, and that would also be associated with the upgrades to the town pump station 7, which have been completed to date and can now maintain or handle the subdivision flows for this subdivision. Water is in the Monroe County Water Authority's service area, and there'll be connections off of East Victor Road and Suncrest. There is as discussed at the preliminary overall process, a large portion of the site, as you can see here in the heavy bold line, will be donated or transferred to the Genesee Land Trust. A memorandum of understanding has been provided to the town for that, for town to review. We have received LaBella's comments for section 1, and we're happy to work through those with LaBella and the town, as well as other town comments, and we will get you responses to all of those prior to our next meeting. It's my understanding that there will not be a resolution tonight, just due to the amount of time that's been passed. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Again, it's not a public hearing, but the board has an opportunity. Joe, questions?
Could you delineate on the map there, the part that's going to the Genesee Land Trust versus what's going to be just conservation easement, or,
Yes.
and how much is being utilized by the Victor Hiking Trails?
Yep, so I've delineated the land to be transferred in the bold line, which goes around the stormwater management facilities, and then it ends here and comes back.
And that's all Genesee Land Trust?
That would be transferred to Genesee Land Trust. There are a couple small areas, very minimal, that in comparison, that would be to the town of Victor. There's a small portion here on this lot, the stormwater management facility areas, and a portion here behind these lots. All of those would be on the lot itself, in other words, the lots have been extended to incorporate or encompass those easements.
So typically, when we have a conservation easement, those boundaries are delineated by markers. This isn't a conservation easement per se. Is there going to be any way that the landowner is going to know that they've crossed over into the Genesee Land Trust?
There are property markers that the town requires be installed, and as these are just two separate properties, those should suffice.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Okay.
If you could just review, what's the current proposal relative to connectivity on Sunray Crest? Connect or not to connect?
So there are currently there's sidewalk on both sides of Sunray Crest, and I'm assuming you're talking about the sidewalk.
The roadway.
Oh, the roadway itself, there's currently a turnaround. It's a dead end. We would be connecting fully with a roadway.
That was my recollection as well. But that wasn't along. Answer my question.
And will you maintain that turnaround for the school buses
No.
during construction even, or?
Not after it's built.
Yeah, once the roadway's done, we're good, sure. Okay.
Oh, Jeff just responded, not during, it won't be terminated during construction, but afterwards it will be removed, I'm
At
assuming.
some point in construction, yeah.
Once the road is viable through, for buses to
Right.
go through and not have to turn around, then it will actually be removed from the parcel it's on right now, correct?
Correct, right. In phase one, it will be removed.
Yeah.
At some point.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Huh?
I guess regarding the land trust, is that pretty much a given? You indicated there was a memo of understanding, which, is that the first step to some type of final agreement, transfer? How does that work?
I can have Jeff talk a little bit more about that. He's been working through that process.
Good evening, Jeff Smith with Woodstone Custom Homes. Lisa was to distribute some materials from GLT. There has been a board resolution that they will accept the property. About the only terms that we will meet along the way, we've already done a phase one environmental, but they will also want the proper deed prepared. They have proposed, essentially the memorandum of understanding states what their intentions are, what their limitations would be in terms of utilization of the property. Their memorandum is principally between us and the Victor Hiking Trails, and they are soliciting the cooperation of Victor Hiking Trails to develop, some trails on the property. But they've also said in that memorandum that their acceptance of the property is not contingent upon their agreement with Victor Hiking Trails. They've reviewed it, the board's accepted it. We will have to go through all of the details in order for them to accept the donation, but they have all the materials from this report We've also provided them the details. There was a little bit of mass grading that was on the fringe of their property, which we've shown them because that was also, they had to understand that it wasn't entirely, although it's 99.9%, unadulterated, but there was some, the section 2, there's a fringe that will be graded as part of section 2, which has to be done as part of section 1 mass grading. But they've been very supportive of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Ernie?
This doesn't look too much different from originally proposed. Am I reading this wrong?
Going back, as originally proposed, there was some confusion as to a memorandum was prepared and presented to the town, and they were somewhat soliciting participation of the town in their acceptance. And the town said they weren't interested in that kind of arrangement. So we went back to GLT and made it clear to them that this was their property exclusively. There wouldn't be town participation in seeking funding, et cetera. And that is what their board agreed to. So it was only, I mean, the intention of giving them the land has never changed. The understanding between the town and the GLT is transformed over time.
Okay, thanks.
There's been some discussion on where the sidewalks would cross over on Sunray Crest by Crestbrook Lane, either mid-block or right at the intersection. Can you comment on that?
I saw that, and I would have to say that our original intention is still, I think, the best. We were to extend, we're proposing a crossing at the end of the existing street over to our one side, which will then envelop our sidewalks. Labella commented, the question is whether we should extend both sides of the existing sidewalk, but I don't see the purpose, because it would go to one of the sides of our streets that's not served with a sidewalk. So the intention was to cross and then connect with our single-sided sidewalks. You probably have to have a detail of the plan up there to understand that.
I was just asking Wes that, and I have it up on my screen, but Wes may be able to and connect through.
Otherwise, we'd end up having two crossings. We'd have to extend that second sidewalk from Sunray Crest and then still cross over to our single-sided.
It's kind of hard to talk in the air without looking at the picture of what you're saying, obviously.
Doesn't make much sense.
Yeah. So
Do we
making
have
a crossing right at the property line or the border between the existing development and the new development on Sunray. Wes is going to bring it up on the screen.
It'd be helpful if you don't have any
12 of 22.
screen that
Wes.
shows the existing plan other than a rendering.
Oh, no. That might help, huh? Wes's magic plug here. Maybe. It's a second to recover. There we go. I'm on sheet 20.
Can you zoom in on
or
that?
12 of 22.
Show you. I'll zoom in here.
Yeah, okay.
So here, Sunray Crest is an existing roadway, right?
Yep.
Which terminates today at this location, right? You can see that.
And that's the hammerhead turnaround that Joe was asking about.
Yep.
Right there.
Yep. So this is where the existing turnaround is for the school buses or whatnot. The existing end of the road is about in this location. So what they're proposing, the applicant, currently today, there are sidewalks on both sides of Sunray Crest, right? And what they're proposing is to extend this sidewalk on the south side all the way to the new road, Crestbrook Drive, Crestbrook Lane, I'm sorry. And then the north sidewalk would extend into their new development area, but then have a crosswalk here at this location. And I think, Labella, we would recommend, which I think this was agreed upon by the planning board during the preliminary subdivision phase, but I think our recommendation, Labella's recommendation, would be to carry this sidewalk all the way here and either put the crosswalk here at the intersection or here. I'm not sure what would be the best location, but I don't know that the mid-block crossing here is what we would recommend.
I would discourage a mid-block crossing personally, and whether it crosses across Sunray at the end of that, by the intersection, or crosses over Crestbrook to the other sidewalk, maybe you don't need two crossings, but.
Well, I would think it would be safer to have the crossing where it is rather than putting a crossing near the intersection where you're getting 3 roads feeding it.
Yeah,
I mean-
I would run it right to here and cross there. And then everyone's looking in this area for people crossing the street rather than driving along here and all of a sudden you got a crosswalk in the middle of that. You have to have like flashing beacons or something to alert that someone might be crossing. And it makes so much more sense to have, where cars are stopped, having a crosswalk. So I would honestly favor extending this sidewalk over to here and then putting a crosswalk across Sunray. And I'll leave it open to the board for comment as well, but that would be my perspective.
Well, if, that's fine. If the board prefers that, we can move that crossing closer to the intersection, extending the north side of Sunray Quest towards the intersection.
It's really a matter of safety from my perspective, because I don't agree that this is a good place to put a crosswalk. It's mid-block, so.
Okay, I agree. I think that makes
Understand
sense.
that? Yeah, okay. And that's the kind of comments that I think it can be easily resolved. It's just, I'd like to make sure that it gets.
Yeah, that's a simple change to the plans.
Right.
There's no problem with that.
Okay.
I agree.
So,
I don't know, because there's only going to be those 2 houses there at the end of the road,
you're talking about
21
these?
and 22.
Yeah, it's just more normal, if you will.
Yeah,
Or for drivers, I think you expect a crosswalk potentially at that location, but you don't expect one necessarily
Yeah,
there.
all of a sudden, you get kids walking along here and they want to cross over because their friends are on the other side or something. I mean,
I don't disagree with what Joe's saying. Realistically, there's not going to be a lot of traffic there. I mean,
Sure.
everybody on Sunray is going the other way, and everybody on Crestbrook is going the other way. You'll
so now
probably
to
see a
that
couple
point,
cars
you
a
get
day
someone
there.
coming across here, they're not going to expect a crosswalk here either, coming the other direction. So either way, the argument still stands, I think.
Right,
So
I
would like to
agree,
see
I
that.
agree with what you're saying.
Okay.
It expected more at an intersection than a straight run.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Wes, comments?
Yeah, I've got a few comments. I know that the applicant received our comments only just today, so they might be still digesting a few of them. We did note that we'd like to see a landscaping plan, which is generally required as part of the design and construction standards for submissions of final subdivision plans. However, we do note that the updated drawings for the final subdivision plan as compared to the preliminary plans, there is a note on drawing C 0.1 that indicates, quote, street trees. The home builder shall install 2 street trees per lot in accordance with chapter 184-16C7 of the Victor Town Code. Final locations should be coordinated with utility services and drainage swales. Trees should not be less than 2.5 inches in diameter at the base at the time of planting and shall adhere to the native plant manual. So if that's the planning board, you may need to decide whether or not you want to see an actual landscaping plan or whether you want to waive that requirement. And then the conservation easement, I appreciate the conversation that's been had thus far about the conservation easement versus lands to be conveyed to the Genesee Land Trust. When I was looking at the subdivision plans, it was difficult for me to identify, just looking at the subdivision plan sheets themselves, which land was going to be conveyed to the Genesee Land Trust versus what was going to be a proposed conservation easement to the town of Victor.
Wes, we agree. I agree. The plans are confusing, and we will make it clear. One of the confusing aspects of it is that really on the GLT land, there wouldn't be conservation easement because it's a nonprofit land conservation trust, and so that was clearly confusing on the plans.
Okay.
there, as Cole said earlier, there are some small, very small areas, one within the stormwater management facilities, because Genesee didn't want to accept those easements and have it on their property. So those are within private ownership, and there would be conservation easements on any lots that are under private.
Okay. That's helpful, thank you.
So that'll be all relabeled and made clear.
All right. And then that takes me, I'm just going to jump ahead in my comment letter here to number 7, the conservation easement markers. And we were thinking that maybe some additional coordination might be required with the Genesee Land Trust, and this kind of gets to our fellow planning board member Joe down here on the audience's left about marker for lands, like identifying lands when will these people know that they're entering into the lands of the Genesee Land Trust? There is a conservation easement marker detail within the plan sheet for the town conservation easements. We may need to better identify on the plans where those conservation easement markers are going to go. But is there a desire or need for some sort of demarcation for the Genesee Land Trust property, whether it be maybe a small placard or a 4x4 post similar to the conservation easement marker, that sort of thing?
Are there corner markers for property? I mean, the residents don't have property that extend onto the land trust, correct?
Correct.
The owners, so they will have property
They have property
corners,
corner markers,
right?
pins.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So presumably, that would be a marker, not that you ever see them, because they're
Right.
usually iron pins or something buried in the ground, or at least that flush with the ground.
Yep.
I wouldn't mind seeing some sort of
I
natural.
I don't
floodplain.
know, I don't even believe that Genesee would be too concerned. They're trying to preserve this land. I mean, I question, are there markers between every parcel in the town when they cross their own land onto the next person's land?
And I'm not suggesting that we go that route.
Well, that's kind of what you're suggesting, is that between ownership, we start having parcel signs that say you're now leaving your property onto your neighbor's property. That's no different here.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe I didn't characterize my thought very well in the letter or what I'm verbalizing here. But are there instances? There's a proposed trail easement to the town of Victor, right, within the plan set. And for example, if that easement is entering into what would be the Genesee Land Trust property, do you want a demarcation there? I don't know. It's just a question.
Well, there was an understanding with Victor Hiking Trails and Genesee Land Trust that they would develop trails on the properties. And if there are specific areas where the town additionally wants easements, then they would be established and would be identified.
Okay. We've talked about the turnaround at 6402 Sunray Crest. Let's see. Property corner markers, storm sanitary pipe trench detail, 5-acre waiver. Just calling out, we'd like to see some bearings and easement bearings and distances for some of what we weren't able to find for some of the easements. Stormwater coordination, town of Farmington. Okay. I guess maybe the last question I might have is any type of coordination that's occurred with the town of Farmington thus far on the stormwater, the discharge pipe or the stormwater management facility that's off to the east of the project, and whether or not they've had any comments back to you at this point.
I have not heard anything directly. I didn't see anything in their comments on the subdivision either. But Keith, what do you have?
So I had the same question myself. Keith Maynard, project manager. Keith Maynard was the stormwater program manager when this went through preliminary. So I dug up an old email, how we handled Bluemont, which was very similar. Stormwater facilities in the town of Victor, but the outfall goes into the town of Farmington. We had Farmington's attorney look at it. We had our attorney look at it. They have to join, or I think their intention is to petition the town board to come into our drainage improvement area. in combination with an easement, a drainage easement to the town of Victor over that pipe, based on what our attorney told us 2 years ago, and I sent the email to Lisa and Mary Stebline today just to refresh their memories, is all we need. And that email chain had something back from Farmington saying, sounds good. So, that, as of 2 years ago, that's where we were at.
Perfect.
Well, thank you, Keith, because I wondered myself, we didn't see any comments directly. And we would, I saw that some comments in terms of the storm facility easements and the maintenance agreements. I mean, our intention is to have drainage districts established here. Right. So some of that, that's going to be the response to numbers 15 and 16.
Okay.
Also, going back before I forget, Wes, not that I care that much, but we've been successful in our last several subdivisions with that language that you were referring to in terms of street trees, and we've pretty much allowed them to be somewhat flexible based on the location of the house, the location, the final location of the driveway, et cetera. And it's an obligation before C of O was issued, essentially, that we plant those trees before we have permanent C of O. We coordinate to some extent the location of the trees with the town. I was surprised to see some language that said something to the effect that they could be on either side of the sidewalk, which we addressed that in Walden Hollow, and the town clearly wants to be outside of all the right-of-way as well as the easements, which puts them quite far back into the lots.
Yeah, then they don't become street trees,
They don't,
right?
that's what I said to them. I said, they're kind of like, the house trees at that point. And I said, you guys, if we put them closer to the street in the right-of-way areas, they'd be more like street trees. So, I mean, Dorchester Park, which was done a long time ago, had a street planting scheme, and it was somewhat difficult to adhere to it because things change as driveways are placed, et cetera. So our preference would be to have the language somewhat loose, is that there's an obligation to have these trees, 2 per lot. We mix them between ornamentals and deciduous, as we did in Dorchester. And it's worked successfully. I wish we could put them closer to the street, quite honestly, but Mark Years doesn't like that. Maybe Keith doesn't either, I don't know, but.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my preference would be to leave the language to be a C of O requirement rather than a fortified plan on the document.
Okay. I'll leave that up to the planning board. But I do recognize in projects in the past, that's how we've done it.
Okay. Sure. Okay. I think that's what we have for the conversation this evening. As Jeff said, we don't have a resolution to move this forward tonight, but I believe we'll be prepared to do that at the next meeting, or at least the next meeting is to come towards.
Well, thank you, and we'll see you next month, I think.
Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, and I should comment, I was pleased that there weren't that many Labella comments. And, I mean.
I tried not to exceed 5 pages.
I really, that says something for Cole. I said, boy, that was pretty good. I think I remember on our last subdivision, there was like pages and pages.
That's how you measure it, huh?
You lost a lot of rides on those comments.
Moving right along, we have 2 more items. First one is recommendation on PDD for Lehigh Place, Victor Heights Parkway. Applicants requesting rezoning 14.2 acre property located on the east side of Victor Heights Parkway, north of Route 251. And the applicant has, let's see, where are we? Asked the planning board for a recommendation to amend the planned development district to be forwarded to the town board. So we have a 11 criteria resolution that Wes has put together. that we'd like to review, I guess, this evening.
Yeah, before I start, does the applicant have a copy of the draft dated November 12th?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to actually read this verbatim, it's rather lengthy. And, but what I did was take the comments that that I heard at the last meeting, tried to flesh them out here in this draft recommendation. So what this is, as you know, the planning board, and for the public's benefit, the planning board does not decide on whether or not to rezone the property, right? That's the town board decision. What the planning board is doing is simply providing a recommendation, a substantive recommendation that's based on the 11 criteria identified in the town code, back to the town board, right? And they'll take into consideration what the planning board has to say and make their decision with regard to the rezoning application. I really don't have anything I'd like to point out in this updated draft. Has anybody had an opportunity to take a look at it, and do you have any questions?
I had an opportunity to take a look at it.
Go ahead.
And I thought it was very well done. And I think, the two things that jumped out at me were the information that you got from the school district, that they were rebuilding and that they were, running out of room. And I guess that's the first time I've seen any type of communication from the school about what we suspected. And I appreciate you including that. And then the other part that you included was that the density wasn't necessarily locked in to the 156 or whatever the magic number is. We still think that's negotiable. Because I still come back to PDD being more like an HDD, which is a high-density development. I think begs the question in my mind, why do we have, multiple dwelling zoning when obviously if you're a developer, you're going to go for a PDD and try to get the most that you possibly can. But I think density is still, for me anyway, up in the air.
Still a concern, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a concern.
Okay, Ernie?
Well, Al had a comment last time about the school district's position, and I suspect that's because his wife is a teacher.
And we're helping to fund a $100 million expansion.
I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Oh, well, first of all, I think, I did read Wes's draft and fully supportive of what you've documented. I do think you addressed the concerns that several of us have voiced relative to impact on the community, impact on the school district, building height, density. I think those are consistent with the feedback that we had provided, so I think you've accurately reflected the commentary from the board.
Al, are we looking in the right direction when it comes to getting information from the school as to what's really going on there in terms of their growth and their needs, and how we should take a look at high-density residential? And I mean, we've sort of taken a gentle look at it. Do we need to take a look at that more deeply?
Well, I think certainly the planning board does, but the town does also in this consideration, right? Because again, there was a build-out as part of the master plan of X number of units. Anytime we exceed that master plan, I'll call it upper limit, will have negative impacts on many parts of the infrastructure, including the school district. So that's again where I'm sympathetic to the fact that, there's a perceived need for housing, but you could take that to extreme that says, well, let's just build this out and be high-rises everywhere because there's a need for housing. But does Victor need to be the solution for all the housing needs in the greater community?
Right.
So I wonder what the build-out plan is long-term for the school district, since we have two towns involved. We have Farmington and Victor.
Well, more than
You
two.
go across the border, there are
Farmington primarily.
very large developments over there as well. So does the school district, or have they commented on?
No,
what-
they haven't. I mean, as far
what
as
they
I
can
know,
fit.
there is no long-range plan, right?
Yeah.
Other than, the next $100 million capital plan, which some
It's
of
all reactive.
Yeah, it's very reactive.
Right.
I mean, they're only allowed, actually, for building projects by the state to look out so many years.
Yeah,
But, my personal belief is that we're going to rapidly outpace the single campus solution for two very growing, two very fast-growing communities.
Well, I grew up in a town where we were multiple towns as part of one school district, and we had, and this is Poughkeepsie area, we had the downtown, there was the Poughkeepsie or Arlington School District. There were two junior highs by the time I got there, one in Poughkeepsie suburb and then one out in LaGrange where I lived, and one major high school. Well, my class graduating size was 560 something, and now it's the campus is so huge just for the high school. I mean, it dwarfs anything. I mean, it's probably 4 times the size in buildings for the high school as it used to be, and it continues to grow. That's multiple towns. And there's been a lot of development, same as I'm seeing here in Victor and Farmington. So I don't know, eventually there will have to be a separate campus for additional schools. That's my point. Which can be another tens or millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to take care of down the road. But is that a goal of the school district?
Or I guess, again, that's where the school districts has to, have a long-range plan.
I mean, we can approve all the houses and condos and apartments that fit, apparently, but, I mean, is that where the town wants to go? That's a long-term plan. And we have no control over Farmington, honestly, in terms of what comes to Victor's Central School District, because it honestly could be Victor Farmington Central Schools, right? It just happens to be in Victor. So.
Again, other solutions are, kind of redraw the lines of where the school district ends, right? And move more students to communities that are declining in population, like Canandaigua, like.
Is Canandaigua declining?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Surprising. Because I know they're trying to consolidate around the state, but it's almost impossible these days to eliminate a school district or consolidate unless the school district gets so small.
But again, those are much broader, long-range
Yeah,
plans
right.
that, again, we are not necessarily involved with, but.
So we're bringing this forward to the town board as an issue or as a consideration of
Correct.
how large the development should be
Correct.
as part of this review. Correct, Wes? I mean, it's.
As well as consideration for any other rezoning applications that comes before.
Sure. So, I mean, a town has a density. This goes beyond the density for that particular site, I think. And that's why it's a PDD application.
Correct.
Okay.
But if the school board is, as you say, reactive, not proactive, then as a board, what are we supposed to do?
Well, that's the crux of the problem.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure that I
no.
understood it.
All right, so it sounds like we're in general agreement with the approach that, and the language that Wes has put together here?
Yep.
And that, go ahead, Wes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know if they need to.
Was about to, but yep, that's fine. So the applicant is here. Any comments regarding what we've put together? Jerry, I know you always have comments, so.
But not many. For the record, my name is Jerry Goldman. I'm the attorney and agent for DeFelice Development, the developer of Lehigh Place. This is your recommendation, and I know that these are considerations that you have raised. And, frankly, the discussion has been kind of interesting to listen to, because in fact, I have yet to see a school district that really says, we don't want as many kids as we can get. Okay, and then we'll deal with it. So if this board wants to be proactive in that regard in dealing with the town board on it, that's your prerogative in terms of the recommendation. We feel very comfortable with this development. We think it's somewhat unique in terms of its location in a light industrial neighborhood. And I think Wes clearly points out some of the differences that you would have from a more traditional multiple dwelling district. And I think I mentioned this last time I was here, that the concept of PDD and the use of it, and when it was created, was basically at a time when the town board did want to have a little bit more authority over issues, density, layout, and everything else. So they had the multiple dwelling district with certain parameters, but they understood that they had the ability as part of a PDD to do something different relative to that. And so it's not really that the PDD is contravening and, upsetting the multiple dwelling zoning. Multiple dwelling is kind of a baseline if it were to be zoned for that, but the plan district does allow for more flexibility. So, in terms of the comments, we like to say you love our plan exactly the way it is, but it's your choice in terms of the recommendation. So, I think that's pretty much our comments. Mark, I don't know if you have anything to add. Okay, Matt. I'm not going to ask anybody else here, part of our team.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I wrote an email saying that I thought Wes did a good job of this, and I liked his discussions. I think that the town board is going to get a pretty good representation of our feeling about this. What I particularly like is and it be further resolved with the approval on the part of the planning board with the idea that we've got the say in how we move forward with the project. I think that's kind of key to helping us get to the root of the issues we've discussed. It gives us the opportunity, having given approval or to the town board. So I think that's kind of the key, this last page.
Okay. Appreciate that.
I agree.
So I don't hear anyone voicing objections or wanting to change anything on this particular document. I believe that it's basically a vote to forward this onto the town board as our document to them, having reviewed the 11 criteria. So with that, I'm trying to keep it simple here, making a resolution based on this document to forward it as written to the town board.
Yeah, basically, this is a
Yeah.
resolution.
Right. So I'm not going to read this resolution. But I will enter it as the text, and I'll take a motion for approval of
I'll
this
move.
document. Al moves.
I'll second.
I hear 2 seconds. Scott, you get it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, getting forwarded to the town board. Thank you, guys. And thanks, Wes, for putting that together. Okay, final application, or at least discussion. It's an informal one. Tonight, Chick-fil-A restaurant. We have had one opportunity to look at an application last spring for a 5,000 square foot Chick-fil-A building at the Eastview Mall site. So we'll continue that discussion. Good evening.
Good evening. Randy Bebout with Bowler Engineering, here on behalf of Chick-fil-A and Wilmerite. We have representatives from both parties here with me tonight. So we were here back on February 27th, as you mentioned. We presented this project. At that time, the only thing that we showed this board was a concept plan and a building elevation, which was the standard Chick-fil-A proto building. Since that time, what we've done is spend a lot of time really trying to enhance the materials to better present our project. Just a quick summary of that is we've provided a landscape plan, we've provided a colored plan of the landscaping, we provided a grading plan so that the board can have a better sense of what the elevation differences are related to this project in relation to the road, in relation down to the mall level. And then we've provided some 3D renderings. I'm thinking that probably the best plan to put up would be the color landscape plan. And I can use that for a lot of the discussion. Perfect, thank you. So when we were here back in February, what we walked away with was really 3 items. Well, let me back up. What we heard was that this board is supportive of having Chick-fil-A in the town of Victor. The board wasn't crazy necessarily about this location. We had talked about other sites. And then, again, the 3 main points that we walked away with was green space, traffic, and architectural design. So I'm just going to start with the green space. So the existing mall, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the detail, but currently the mall green space is 64.6 acres approximately, representing a 34.6% green space. This project would reduce the green, or increase the impervious, reduce the green space by about 1.08 acres. That would put us in need of a variance with about, that would change that percentage overall to about 34% versus the 34.6. And the last, I'll just reference the last project that came in front of the zoning board in the town was the LL Bean project that changed that green space to the 34.6 that it is today. So as part of what we've submitted to the town or to the planning board is just, we took a look at what other green spaces are along the corridor, really going from the, to the north of the Benderson development to the north of us, and then down to 490. And we have provided a table of what those approximate green space areas are, and we provided both, what's on the property and what's from the, I'll say, the building setback or parking setback to the actual street line. And really what you can come away from that is that what we're proposing here isn't anything different from all the other developments that are along this more intensive commercial corridor. So the area that, the green space that is proposed is 48 feet. That's from the drive lane canopy to the right-of-way line. And if you measure it to the road, it's about 68 feet. So we looked at a half a dozen plus other sites, and that really is in line with all those other sites along the corridor. So our position on this is we're not asking for anything special that isn't already out there today. We understand the board's importance of this green space, and we respect that, but
I think you're missing the point, actually. Our point was that it is a very attractive entrance to the mall.
Understood.
It's not the percentage of green space, it's the way it looks. And secondly, the mall was built, and this entrance, I think, was built in the early 70s, and the other ones that you're citing come much later. So you're comparing kind of apples to oranges there. So just a point.
yeah, I mean, again, with all due respect, we're just comparing to other green spaces that are along the corridor. So, I mean, there still is a significant green space that's left in front of this site with this development. And then if you can go to the 3D renderings, either there's a couple different views. Yeah, even that view right there works fine. So with this building sitting down, because again, the mall parking lot is a lot lower that everybody's well aware of, with this building positioned like this in the green space, so we have this, 60-foot plus green space from the edge of roadway to what will be the fence that's sitting on top of the wall, with the building basically tucked up against that wall, with the exception we have a drive lane in between that retaining wall, which will be 10 feet plus or minus high, and then the building, so that the view that you're getting is this green space in what we think now is a very attractive looking building. So you're not seeing, necessarily a lot of the parking spaces, the pavement from the corridor, from the view from 96 is really screened by this building. Certainly, there's some view of it as you sit at the intersection, but, that view right there, there's still really shows, and this was the point of us putting a lot of effort into the graphics so you can see the amount of green space and the significance of that that is left here. And then what this these 3D renderings show is representative of the landscape plan that we have provided. We feel like it's a pretty significant effort at enhancing the site with landscaping. Yes, there is existing trees, stating the obvious, that are being removed as part of this development, but what we're putting back is very comparable as far as the number of trees that we're removing versus what we're putting back. It's within, 10%, 15% of replacement. And what we're proposing for the trees are red maples, some pin oaks, and linden for the majority of that. And then there's, again, a significant amount of other plantings along the fence here that you're, the fence along the top of the retaining wall, and then a lot within the site itself. And then there's another view. The other part of what we're looking to enhance here is the entrance. So, yeah, this is a different shot of the entrance. You can see the plantings along down the right side, the trees, and then that island area we're proposing to dress up. Now, somebody might say, well, geez, maybe you should put a tree in that, but there's actually some utility lines, some electric lines that go across there, which is why we didn't enhance that, any further with some trees. So that's kind of the summary of the green space and the things that we're doing to try to, enhance the site in itself. Regards to traffic, so we've submitted the traffic study to the town. That was completed. We've also submitted the traffic study to DOT. We were hopeful we were going to have some concurrence from them, but we have not heard back from them. But the timing just didn't align. But regardless of that, we have outlined the mitigation that the traffic study speaks to. There's really 4 different pieces of mitigation. One of them is signal timing. So in the traffic study, there's a level of services. So the Saturday midday peak hour has the biggest change, and we're mitigating that by changing the signal timing, proposing to change the signal timing on the north-southbound by 2 seconds and giving that 2 seconds to the left turn lane, to the northbound left turn lane, so that it would operate at the same level of service that it operates today. The other change, maybe if you can go back to the colored landscape plan. Other change is proposed would be making this a 4-way stop versus a 3-way stop. Currently, this westbound is free-flowing. We're proposing that we make that a 4-way stop just to improve the safety of that intersection. And then
I disagree with that approach. The only way you don't get cars backing up into 96 is to make that free-flowing into the mall. I don't think that would make it any safer, other than people that might make an error in pulling through from the approach from Macy's up onto that ring road. I use it
I know
all
our
the
traffic
time.
engineers looked at that stacking, and
Yeah.
they didn't have any concerns with that, what you're referencing, but
There are times when cars are coming in, either crossing over from North Face, what used to be North Face, or right turns, if that clears out. And if you start having conflicts by making cars go and, stop there at that stop sign and having them alternate with cars coming out and turning left, it's going to back up very quickly.
There's no queuing room.
Yeah, there's no queue space for that. That's what Scott said better than I did, so.
I mean, we can take another look at that.
Yeah.
And then
So,
the
anyway.
other proposed mitigation or changes here is on this ring road. Currently, this ring road is 2 lanes heading from here down. We're proposing to, this lane up here is a through, and then a through and a left. We're proposing to make that just a left that would turn out this exit. And then this lane basically becomes a striped center area, and then as we get down to the Chick-fil-A, then it provides a lane for cars to be able to turning into Chick-fil-A, and then we would still have the left turn lane here turning out onto this drive here.
That I would agree with, both of those comments.
You said you do.
I do agree with it, yeah.
So that's the proposed traffic mitigation.
Although, just while we're on that, I mean, I still have major concerns about just the in and out from those various openings as well as the drive-through.
Yeah.
A lot of
Understood.
conflict with
Yep.
that ring road and the
Mhm.
exit. I just think that that's gonna be an internal traffic nightmare and ripe for conflict and or accidents.
Okay.
And that's why we're creating this center turn lane, so that, I mean, we still would have the free flow of traffic around the ring road. It wouldn't impede that.
Well, you got people entering and exiting at least 1, 2, 3 locations to get into the Chick-fil-A parking lot. You've got the 2 drive-through exits. It just seems like a lot of potential conflict with the,
Understood. And then if you could probably just go back to, actually go to the building elevation, please. All right, so what we propose here is a custom design to this location. There is nothing proto about this. We've made the building taller, which I think we're always planning on doing regardless of the facade design, but the main parapet wall here is at about 23'6". The highest peak, which I believe is that one, is 28'6". So the materials on the building would be hardy plank siding. We've created some steps in the building, and then the brown you see is a cultured stone that would be around really all the entry points, and then there's a stone wainscot, and then we've created these gable areas at the entry points. So we have those on all 4 sides of the building. And then the bronze of the gable areas match the bronze of the canopy, and then matches the canopies over the windows, which is a little hard to see on that view. You might see it better on we jump to the 3D rendering from the parking lot, you might see that better. If you go to the 3D rendering, there's a view from the parking lot, Chick-fil-A parking lot. Yeah. Keep going, maybe it was that last.
Talking about
yeah,
this one?
actually. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Go up to one more, that lower picture
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's a little still hard to see, but there's canopies over these windows, canopies over the entryways. And again, this is a custom design that the architectural team that has come up with. We think this fits nicely. You know, across the street, there's a lot of different architectural designs. You know, the mall is a different architectural design, and this just seems like a nice transition between the two.
Just understand that across the street is in the Valentine Historic District.
Yes, understood.
So all of that is very exceptional to some of the other architecture in the area. If you look at the mattress store, City Mattress.
Yep.
That's arts and crafts, and the facades were updated for Stickley and Lazy Boy, I think, to conform to that approach. So you're competing against some fairly unique, but I'll call it historic style architecture.
Yep.
At the corner that's most prominent from the mall to the historic district. So,
And again, we listened to the board, we brought this in, we've made a lot of changes. We're here to work with the board, and, you know, here tonight, we're informal, so, you know, we're looking for the board's feedback on the information we submitted.
okay, well, you can continue.
So, I mean, to that end, I think, right, the architectural features are enhanced from what was originally proposed. I still think there's probably some work to be done on it. But I certainly think it's good movement.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really have, that sort of concludes the presentation, and I can be glad to answer any questions the board may have and listen to your thoughts.
So I like the changes you've made architecturally. I think it's much improved. We did talk about other sites, and I am curious, again, my concern clearly is the entrance area there. And I am curious, we talked about moving this as little as 100 feet to the north to preserve more of that look at the entrance. I understand that there may be some issue with Macy's having dibs on that parking lot space, but can you talk about siting where it is rather than moving it around a little?
Are you
at the
talking
mall?
about like putting it actually in the parking lot that's there now?
Moving it, 100 feet to the north
Okay,
even.
but so not, I'm looking at a plan up there, Joe, that is, oh, you're.
So
looking at the other way.
straight up.
Go
Just-
straight up.
Just move it straight up.
So leaving all the green space, but putting it in the parking lot? Is that what I'm hearing?
Just slide the whole thing 100 feet north.
Ah.
And I think that would mitigate some of the traffic coming into the mall, making that right-hand turn into the Chick-fil-A parking lot, too.
Well, the answer to that is, it's not that easy, right?
Okay.
Because of tenant restrictions, lease agreements, as far as taking those spaces away, and then, those spaces, yes, a majority of the year, they're not used, but certainly, in the holiday season, they are used. This project, as it stands, requires a parking variance. I think anything you bring into the mall is going to likely require a parking variance.
I'm at the mall maybe 4 times a week for the past 40 years, and people behave real badly at that entrance to the mall. And it gets worse when, between now and Christmas, people behave really badly. And I'm not sure that, even given the thought you've put into this, that's going to be significantly improved over the way they behave now.
Yeah, and then I do want to, you touched on it, because when we were here last time, we did talk about other sites along the corridor. There was some sites mentioned. The Chick-fil-A team has looked at this, and there really is no other viable sites in this 96 corridor. And I'm talking from, the Home Depot limit on the north to 490, where they would want to be, if you go south to the intersection, south of the thruway, there's nothing available there. They're just, we talked about the site within Walmart. That's just that would not be a location that Chick-fil-A, like the piece that's there probably isn't big enough. So it may not be big enough. There could be restrictions from Kohl's and Walmart. Chick-fil-A deals with Walmart a lot. Sometimes those are challenging lease agreement discussions. So that's, we don't look at that as a viable site. And you just, you tell us, but along the corridor, there really is nothing available that would fit this. This is really the only viable location. I know we've talked about other locations within the mall at the last meeting, the bank, which I think is still operational. There was a talk about, can Chick-fil-A go where the old Sears thing, or flip the parking? Again, that's just not a location that would work for Chick-fil-A.
Okay. Scott?
I guess my take on the discussion is that when it comes down to green space, you've got green space at Eastview Mall that encompasses the entire perimeter of the mall, including the stormwater ponds and that sort of thing. And I think this is really high-value green space comparatively, and I think that's the point that I was trying to make last time you were here, which is why I don't think this is the right location, because of that, and wanting to preserve that, because it is subject to those traffic issues that we mentioned before, and I don't see those improving. Maybe the DOT wants to change the light by 2 seconds. That's fine. I don't think that's going to do the trick. And I guess for us planning board members and residents of the town who use this area quite frequently, I think we all know this is a very busy area. It is exactly as described. I don't see a traffic engineer really surpassing the experience and knowledge that we have as planning board members on this. You can tell me again and again that your traffic engineer looked at this and we changed the traffic signal 2 seconds, but I don't buy it.
All I can say is our traffic engineer has a history here. They did the traffic study for the Walmart project, so they do have a lot of history here. They understand what you're explaining. They know what it is, but the numbers, we looked at we took counts. We have those numbers. We know what the level of services are. Chick-fil-A is a lot of pass-by traffic. Yes, we are generating new trips, but the chart at the end of the day, the level of service chart tells us what's happening.
Yeah, well, I know the level of service charts always say what they say, and the traffic engineer's report always says at the end that, no appreciable change to the traffic situation will occur due to this development, or words to that effect. I was wondering if I could take a look at one of your slides that you showed before where the 3D view of the building poking up. There's that one right there. So that's looking up 96, is that right?
Yeah, that's looking northwest.
And so is that topography and everything to scale then, to the extent that that building is going to be protruding up that far from the grade at the street?
I don't know if there's probably more grade drop than that is depicting. But the building, the elevation change from the roadway to the parking lot is about 17 feet. That building, the top of the hardy plank, I'll call it the parapet wall, is 23 feet. And then the top of those gables are as high as 28'6". So yeah, I mean, it will project. You won't see the drive-through canopy that's in between the building and the wall is about 10 feet. So that'll be basically at the top of the wall.
Why does the building have to be that tall?
We think it's important for
visibility.
Visibility.
Yeah.
I thought. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if the building is standard height, the signs are going to be half cut off.
What does Wilmerite have to say about this?
Good evening. John Dower, head of leasing for Wilmerite. My job is to keep the project filled with great tenants and have a great spot for the community to go. I've been working with Chick-fil-A this is 3 years on this, from the beginning of talking with them. Great company, very great to work with. I think what I'm most excited about with this is the habitual nature of people, and the more times we can bring them onto our site, the more chances that they go into the project, or when they're leaving the project, go here. And as we all know from our shopping experiences, changing those habitual drive patterns is important, and I think they're probably one of the few tenants that can really add value to the overall asset in that particular spot. Certainly understand some of the points, and we will be adding more green space. We've heard and listened and understand that. And as we develop more areas that are on pavement only, like we have a preliminary discussions about a hotel that'll be adding a lot more green space around that as well. And certainly going to be in the overall planning as we go along. But this is important to the overall development and continued keeping it viable and keeping our competitive advantage over our neighbors for shopping centers, not in the Victor area, but east and west of us in neighboring cities.
So you don't have any objection to the height of that building?
Well, it sounds like the scale on that is probably not accurate, but.
Yeah, I can add one thing, Eric Wright with Wilmerite and Construction. Part of the reason that building is that height is to screen the mechanicals. So that was what drove raising that height up a little bit higher, is to make sure that when you're on 96, you're not looking down at mechanicals that are there. And in terms of just the green space, we understand the thought of it being a high-value green space, and that's what led to a lot of the conversations of how do we enhance the green space that's there and make sure that, this landscaping is done appropriately and gives that great welcoming experience when you pull into the mall, so.
Yeah, and maybe just a comment, again, just my own opinion, right? So nothing to detract from the landscaping that's proposed. It's very nice. It's very well manicured. It's garden-like, right? But the issue is it's replacing forest, essentially, right? From the feel of a forest to a well-manicured garden. So I don't know, again, if there's any opportunity to, retain some of the large, mature evergreen trees, I think would certainly be a positive improvement from what's being proposed here. And again, it's not necessarily the quantity of green space, right? We're within the margin of error on, what it's replacing, but it's, getting back to the quality, it's forest-like feel when you drive by there, which again, basically would go away with at least the current proposal.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an opportunity to retain any of those trees with having to build that retaining wall, but I think we can certainly explore that.
Yeah, we would have to look, there's a fair amount of grading that's happening on that upper part again, but we certainly will look at, what can we do to keep some of those.
Now, and again, certainly, personally, again, would love to see that property remain vibrant, right? So again, not opposed to trying to bring tenants in there that are gonna keep that vibrant, but again, just now, internal traffic. So again, the traffic studies may be perfect for Route 96, and maybe this doesn't drive a lot of incremental volume on 96. But internal, that quadrant, you guys know, you live it. It's dangerous, even when it's not busy. And I could just imagine a lot more incidents from either pedestrians or cars on that inner area, coming and going on and off that Chick-fil-A site. So those are my two primary concerns: internal traffic and risk, and the loss of the matured forest-like entry.
Yeah, and I think we completely understand the traffic nature. I will say, just somebody that drives that quite often, turning into Chick-fil-A to go to Chick-fil-A is probably the safest and the easiest path you can take. You're taking a right and you're veering down that long pathway. So, it's gonna increase traffic, but I think that's the safest route you go when you take that.
Then you gotta get back out.
You do, but it's just with the exits, you can take a right out of that parking lot and go up.
Unless you wanna go to the mall, which again, you're all about driving traffic to the mall. So I just had my nice Chick-fil-A and I wanna shoot over to Macy's.
Yeah, and I think that ring road section is not trafficked very frequently right now. And there is adequate turning areas right there.
Well, again, I like Joe, private frequently, not as frequently as Joe. And again, even when there's not a lot of traffic there, you gotta be looking like, with your head on rotating to just make sure that, you're seeing all avenues of potential people coming at you. And I just see this as really enhancing the risks.
So, understood.
Maybe we need a roundabout there or something.
Let's get the state involved and put a
Well, I sort of feel that way when I go in there,
So one of the things that I wanted to comment on, there's been a lot of talk about this green space, and this is a long-standing major entry point to the mall. Matter of fact, it used to have the Eastview logo as a monument on that corner. And so that's kind of what attracted people, is it was an attractive entrance, put it that way. I'm not talking about the monument itself, but just the fact that it's well identified that way, and it's a lot of green space. So much so that I believe it's still a no-touch area on the plans for any development, which back in the 90s, I think. So I want to know how you address that. If you want to put something here where it was never intended to have any development on this site, because it was a approval for other expansions on the mall, created this no-touch green space at that entrance.
Understood. And that's why we're here on our second meeting. We're talking about this, and how do we, what do we need to do to get the board more comfortable with this development?
Well, there was an intent on the board back in the 90s, I wasn't on it, but to preserve this space as green space. So.
Yeah, and I think
John and Eric have spoken to that, and part of this is keeping the mall vibrant. As I said, Chick-fil-A is a great tenant for them to continue that. Chick-fil-A has a great reputation as far as maintaining their property, a great community member, and it's important, I think, to the mall, just for the long-term viability to help that.
Can you bring back up the plan again, please, Susie? You know, the colored plan, probably the first or second image. Yeah, thanks. So has there been any thought to perhaps pushing some, I think Macy's starts here, their lot. And this parking area is mall parking, as I understand it. I don't know how much of the Macy's, I'm looking at it, sorry. Bear with me a second. All right. I don't know how much is attached to Raymore and Flanagan / Ethan Allen and Goodwill parking space right there. But has there been any thought to perhaps pushing this out and maybe putting the ring road tying in back here further to preserve some more of this green space right there? I know you can't take it all off of there, but we'd like to preserve a lot of that green space. That was the intent back in the 90s to create this no-touch
Yeah,
green space area.
we have explored that a little bit. Peter Vars wasn't able to make it with BME,
Okay.
but he has looked into that. There are some restrictions, as you said, with Macy's on where things could be.
Yep.
In addition to that, we do have, even though it seems like there's a lot of parking there are restrictions within those different agreements, not just with Macy's, but the other anchors on taking large fields of parking away for different uses. So I know Peter's explored it. I think the town engineers provided some of that feedback on, is there a way to make that work? And he wasn't able to figure out a way to reroute that and move it over into that area.
But I think to Joe's point, what about the agreement to the town? I mean, you're talking about the agreement to Macy's.
Yeah, I
but
think-
we're talking about the agreement to the town.
We have to explore that a little bit more. We didn't have a ton of records on the minutes for when that happened and the thought process behind that. We've been looking for our records on that. But as Randy pointed out, I think that was amended previously for the 2003 expansion, I believe.
Oh,
of
there
that
was a
front area.
lot of area taken up here where they bumped out the wall to put the restaurants, basically the bump out for all the restaurants.
Yeah, so I think part of that is the nature of malls changing and having to draw in customers in a different way. They're not the hub they may have been in the past where it was a mall and everybody was going to there. So we're trying to continually reinvent and find ways to make sure that it's as relevant as possible.
Yeah.
But don't we have areas elsewhere in the mall that could support this restaurant that just aren't sitting on top of green space? I guess I was under the impression that we had a couple of areas where there's very little retail going on.
At the last meeting, I believe the only two places that, well, we might have talked about three. One was the former Regal, which obviously Chick-fil-A would not have any interest in being back there from a visibility standpoint. But we talked about the bank parcel, which I think is still a bank. And then we talked about the old Sears on the north end. I think there was a thought about flipping the parking to where the Sears is and flipping the Chick-fil-A to where the parking is. I just don't think that that works for Chick-fil-A. And we've, like I said, we've looked hard at this corridor and, it's just, there's not much there.
I had thoughts of talking to the bank and saying, hey, let's put a dual building there, drive through, get your money, and then go get a Chick-fil-A, and then you can.
That bank pieces.
And then shoot over the mall.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's smaller, but, there's a kiosk right out here for, over there for the DSL, right? And not saying that this, it's apparently a very active bank location for community bank. It's like one of their best ones. So I understand that they need space too for their customers. I never see people there, and a few cars here and there.
There's property lines right there as well.
Yeah, that's Dick's, I think, owns that piece. And they do use it for valet parking in the holiday time. I'm trying to work with you here. I just tend to understand that this is a no-touch area that was intended back in the day, and you know, it's been constantly chipped away at, I think, at the front of the mall till we have just like little strips of landscaping.
Well, and I mean, I think the other thing is that the infrastructure is here, right? I mean, we have the signal, we have the roadways. I know there's some concerns about some of that, but I mean, the infrastructure is here for this.
And I can speak just to the overall history of mall development and retail. When malls, in this one included, were being developed, they were the only game in town. And it wasn't just Eastview. Many malls were designed that way, where it didn't have a whole lot of road frontage. It was all once you got into the ring road. With the big box category kind of growing up and these power strip centers coming in, that started to change for the malls because the strength started shifting. So you have to now compete with that. And so for a mall not to have the sight lines and things right up front gives it a major disadvantage to a power strip center that does all of those things. I will say, from seeing the vast majority of malls around this country going around, and the comments we get from site tours with national CEOs of tenants, retailers coming in, the presence of this mall from Route 96 and I think it was a 2003 expansion, everybody loves.
It's probably all the green space in the front that they
Yeah, that's what they
are drawn into.
Not
my
once
friends
did
talk
they
about.
mention that.
What they're thinking of.
No, but the presence of the mall itself is a real statement piece. And obviously, we want to preserve that. But I think, to your point, that absolutely was the case. And when that was probably done, I think it was in the early 90s, it really hadn't shifted yet to what I'm talking about now. But, you know, competition is a great thing, but we need to stay relevant, and we need to, and quite frankly, in my opinion, we need to stay ahead of the curve. I don't like playing catch up. That's a dangerous game.
While on my tenure on the board, I've seen expansions or additions, you know, you got between the restaurants and the L. Bean and Mon Mauer, those three pieces right there in the last
Very important.
20 and change years have done a nice job keeping them all going. It would be nice to see something in Lord and Taylor, and I understand there may be some things coming, but I will reserve that for when it does, so.
Yes, of course.
I'd love to keep it as viable as possible, obviously you do. I've seen Marketplace switch over completely from mall to UR,
Yeah.
basically, right? The hospital
Yeah.
services and lesser extent maintaining some of the retail, but I mean, even Dick's is leaving there.
Correct.
I think.
They're going to a power strip center.
Right. So, you know, it's nice to have the Dick's here that we have, which is great.
And I will tell you, one of the things that makes Eastview dominant over its competitors in New York State for shopping malls is the shoppability of it and the beauty of it. And it's not one thing, it's all of those things put together. So that's not lost on us. And I think when you see future things coming in front of you for a potential hotel, you're going to see attention to detail with that in mind. And I can definitely speak for the Wilmots on this. That's not lost on us. And it is in our planning as we continue to build and keep the project the dominant force that it is.
So that issue about the landscaping, or, you know, the no-touch area, and I think the architecture are the two biggest things maybe that the board is most
Yeah, and
concerned
Peter
with hearing that.
mentioned that to us. He said, I think I get this right, there was one time, I think like 98, where it would, and maybe it was LLB where it was addressed, and they did, it was, a variance or whatever was given. He hasn't been able to find it. We've been kind of scouring the office, and I'm sure we'll track down what it was about, but we'll certainly address it.
It was the boot.
I'm sorry?
The boot.
So they all- Well, it was considered a sign or some sort of monument
Sure.
that had to be adjusted in terms of the town's
Gotcha, okay.
code for the LLB anyway, but,
Gotcha. Well, we absolutely know that's an issue, and we'll make sure to find that and certainly address it
Yeah.
in the formal.
I mean, personally, I think you've started with the architecture, moving away from just a standard box.
Yeah.
I think you could do more to complement, it doesn't have to be the same architecture as all the other buildings, but certainly, to me, it needs to look like there needs to be a reason for roofs on a building, not just like add-ons. So that needs to be, like, if you look at North Face again, whatever it is now. It's a building, you know, the roofs are there for a reason, and, you know, I've seen pitched roofs with mechanical equipment inside and vents and movers and stuff like that.
Here's an out-of-the-box thought, right? You go to urban areas, green roofs, green infrastructure on the roof.
It's a different.
Yeah, we can extend our green space onto your roof.
Right across the canyon.
Oh, they're shuddering in their shoes.
Does that double driveway have to be a 90 as it goes behind the green space?
Does it have to be,
Where's my, wait a minute, I got one. Does that have to be a 90?
What's the green space to the, I guess, north?
I mean,
Yeah.
Got one.
We can share one.
You know.
Yeah, they're right there, like the green space on the inner ring.
You do
Yep.
anything here.
you're saying make it a bigger radius? We could, ultimately, that impacts the amount of stacking by some degree. I don't know what degree, but we could look at that.
Probably a couple cars anyway.
Yeah.
That just, you know, it may just give us that much more space to keep some of the bigger trees perhaps, or enhance the landscape in there somehow. So it's-
Yeah, I know there's some trees up in here, and again, we're basically starting at the right-of-way line, and we're grading down, and that's why we didn't propose to keep the existing trees, but there's certainly ways to get creative to do that.
Again, I'm just kind of shooting from the
Yeah,
hip.
no, we're here, I mean, we want to hear the feedback, you know, even, you know, thoughts on architect. We don't want to walk away here without having that direction so that, you know, when we come back, we better address the concerns.
The architecture, obviously, I was referring to ones across the street. You got, Allentown is right there, so
Yep.
we don't like to take away from that. I know you're talking about the mall and all that, but if you look at Wendy's down the road, for instance, that's a complete building, all brick, nice pitched roofs.
Yep.
Oh, there, the West is on top of it.
Okay.
That is architecture that doesn't have to be red brick, it can be stone. it
Yeah,
can be
no,
stone
I'm with
things.
The old North Face right across the street.
Yeah, so that was pretty unique. It was sort of a massing of barns concept, and I think that Rinaldi did a beautiful job with that building, and some of the other ones that are there too. So, I mean, just look at Beer Project.
Okay.
That would go a long way, I think, to making it fit within that corner.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I mean, there's definitely some different stuff there, so we will take another look at it, but
Yeah.
sometimes you don't know what pieces you're looking for, because
Sure.
all
I mean,
those look a little bit different.
You know, you look at not just North Face, but even beyond the buildings, beyond it, took architectural examples from the village of Victor and through the town, that type and style. I mean, it doesn't have to be Chick-fil-A, but you look across to the City Mattress again, that's arts and crafts in a building,
Yep.
not just tack on facade pieces.
Understood.
So I think that's kind of what we would expect in that location.
Okay.
Can you shoot across behind it? New York Beer Project?
You had a beer yet over at the project?
I have not.
You should go to that building.
My
It's
wife has,
beautiful.
but I have.
Burgers are good. So that's an old, obviously old industrial
Yeah.
look type thing, and Dave Hanlon did a beautiful job on a lot of this stuff, so he, you know, yeah, that's pretty upscale architecture.
Yep.
But again, it's the historic district, that's why it's there. So,
Okay.
and you're reflecting that, and that's, I think those are the comments that City Mattress got as well when they came in with for their building, is it can't just be a box,
Right.
so.
Okay.
Well, even
No.
the bank, right, the bank right across the street too,
Yeah, Chase, yeah, that was gonna be a box, not for very long. It became a more, you know, attractive building, so.
I think that's helpful. I think I think the board had said we've taken a step in the right direction, but there's more work to do there.
So, doing a better job enhancing the green space, trying to retain stuff. I know those big trees are set pretty far back, sorry. So, and I'm looking at the, you know, the local street view right now, they're pretty far away from the
Yeah,
road,
they're-
so you're probably right in the middle of your wall or something.
Yeah, we'll take I mean, we have an overlay of that we can take a look at. Yeah, I mean, most of those, as you can imagine, will not be able to be saved, but.
I mean, these are street trees that can stay, but, you know, as soon as you get into the middle of the site, all of those have to be gone for your layout to work. So, reconstructing with some forest.
So it sounds like maybe there's a preference to have some replace, maybe some of the deciduous trees we have might.
Yeah, it's kind of
prefer
a
to
blade.
see
With
it.
more mature evergreens, I mean, I don't know what the largest size you could replant in there. but
Maintain that feel.
Something
Okay.
bigger than 6 feet would be a good start.
Okay.
So we seem to have wandered back a little bit towards the site with some enhancements instead of not wanting it at all at that location. Am I hearing that? Are they hearing that from you guys?
Well, I think what we heard is that's the only site that will work for Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
So let's tweak it so that it maintains some of the character that we're seeing there now, so.
All right. I'm trying to give them some feedback more than just, this is what we would prefer in a site near this area, not, yeah, we could work with you on this site. I think you'd still want to look at seeing if you could push it out a little bit. You know, maybe the ring road has to relocate a little bit, but that intersection where Goodwill is, just look at it. You know,
Sure.
I don't know how Wilmerite can deal with the pieces that aren't Macy's, if you're able to do that.
They probably can do anything, that's what I heard.
Okay. Sounds like it's been going for a couple of years already, so. Yeah, so I mean, we're talking this strip right here, I think that looks like it could be available to work with, and then taking this intersection, moving it back just a bit, but that doesn't line up with this, so you might.
Yeah, you would have an offset.
You'd have an offset intersection, right?
Yes.
I don't know how that works, you might, certainly we'd appreciate it, looking at it a little more in depth. I'm trying to guide this a little bit, but, you know, I want to hear.
You're doing great.
You should have heard me before we started this meeting. You may have not have recognized the conversation. So, anything else from you guys on the board? Wes, any comments at all? You're here for the ride? Moment? Yeah, I guess we'll be interested to see what you come back with.
Okay, great.
These
Yeah, I
comments.
appreciate the board's time. Thank you very much.
More time to read. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Ella Bean is my friend. All right, we do have one other item to briefly go over.
We'll take a quick 2-minute break.
Okay, it's about the calendar, so if you want to think about it while you're taking that break.
Anyway, I was just watching out for my companion.
Lethal friend.
Jim has already said that he wouldn't mind Thursday, but you guys have a meeting in October, it's early voting. So the either option is to go down to one meeting in October, November, December, or move that October meeting to Thursday.
I think we should have 2 meetings in October.
Okay.
Personally, and if it has to go to Thursday, then we can work with it, I think. You guys okay with that?
Usually a year out, I can pretty much work.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Okay, I didn't even know if Thursday was an option, and Susie was asking.
So that's still, what, 2 weeks till the November meeting, or 3?
That would be 2 weeks.
Okay.
It'd still be the
So
same
A
week.
little less than,
A little less than 2 weeks.
So, okay. As long as the applicants know that there's a
Mhm.
slightly shorter time, that you won't have time to come to the next meeting unless everything, all the ducks are in a row.
Yep, we would advertise it as Thursday.
Is it 3 weeks before, between these two, or just 2? 23rd to the 15th?
This is the B, right?
Al has a place to go.
No, I'm fine, we can stay.
All right.
Joe needs it.
All right, we can talk about this at the next meeting. It sounds like we're okay with 2 meetings in October.
Okay.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ernie moves, Scott seconds. Thank you, everyone, for your patience, and have a great rest of your week.